Chapter 497, Myriad-Year Spirit Milk and Soul Nurturing Tree. The screen of white mist thinned, and Han Li looked at the woman with restored calm. Han Li muttered, "It is truly a pity that I can no longer enjoy such a view." When Yuan Yao heard this, she blushed before delicately chuckling. "Didn't Brother Han go to the 5th floor with those masters? How did you arrive here?" After she said that, she caressed her wet hair, and it dried in an instant with a flicker of white light. A few strands of dark hair fell in front of her face, a stark contrast against her snow-white skin that served to illuminate her beauty. Han Li enjoyed the sight, as this woman was among the greatest beauties he had ever seen. Each and every one of her movements were enough to ensnare any man. After taking several glances at her graceful appearance, he calmly said, "I merely triggered a restriction and ended up teleporting here. I wish to ask for guidance from Lady Yuan. What is this place?" Triggered a restriction. Yuan Yao's eyes shifted and she wore a mysterious smile. It was clear she didn't believe Han Li, but Han Li paid her doubt no mind. He merely chuckled and indifferently stared at her in silence. Yuan Yao's face slightly reddened. This pest Han Li was truly giving her a headache, as she was keenly aware of her inability to deal with him. Not only had she witnessed the fearsomeness of Han Li's insects, but even the charming techniques of an expert such as herself had little effect against him. She furrowed her slender brow and could only helplessly respond, "This is a secret room on the 2nd floor. You came out of such a shabby transportation formation. Had I known this were possible, I would have smashed it to pieces and prevented myself from having to deal with you." With that said, Yuan Yao glared at Han Li with obvious annoyance. It appeared she still felt aggrieved at having her naked body seen. Han Li remained completely unperturbed, as if he hadn't heard her. Instead, he lazily stretched his back and emerged from the water before putting his shoes back on. In the short time he had spent in the water, he had restored a portion of his magic power. Although he wished to spend more time there, he felt it would be in his best interest to leave Heaven Void Hall as soon as possible. As a result, Han Li no longer paid any attention to Yuan Yao and walked towards the south exit of the room. When he arrived at the exit, he saw a mess. There was a large stone room with a completely fragmented puppet lying on the ground, surrounded by holes. It was clear that Yuan Yao had fought a bitter battle here. There was a gate on the other side of the room. A familiar white light sparkled from it, appearing to be exactly the same as the other gates from the inner halls. Han Li hesitated for a moment before walking towards it. After looking at it for a moment, he took out his Heaven Void map fragment and poured spiritual power into it before slapping it onto the door. As a result, the door flickered with white light, but did nothing else. Han Li sighed. As expected, using the map fragment to leave wasn't possible. He wondered whether or not he possessed the skill to break open the restriction. As he was unable to come up with a solution, he started heading towards the north exit. Yuan Yao's gaze fell upon Han Li. After a moment of thought, she coldly said, "What are you doing? That gate has a formidable formation spell. It isn't something that an ordinary cultivator can destroy. Could it be you wish to break it and seize the treasure within?" Just as Han Li arrived at the other exit without turning his head, he asked, "I wish to leave Heaven Void Hall. Does fellow Taoist Yuan have a better method?" Yuan Yao's eyes brightly flickered in thought before a peculiar expression appeared on her face. "None. However, this young woman fancies the treasure here. Would fellow Taoist Han be interested in going treasure hunting with me?" As he stared at the colorful mist surrounding the exit, he bluntly said, "Hunt treasure. It seems fellow Taoist Yuan has already spent some time here. If you are truly able to break through the restrictions here, then wouldn't you have done so earlier?" Yuan Yao blushed, but her expression soon grew serious as she adopted a stubborn attitude. "I've already spent the day researching it. In about 4 days, I will be certain to break through the formation." When Han Li heard this, he turned around with astonishment and looked at the woman with narrowed eyes. Yuan Yao felt restless. After some time, she eventually conceded, "Fine. I'll admit that if I were to attempt to break the formation spell alone, it is possible that the Heaven Void Hall would close before I succeeded. However, if fellow Taoist Han were to aid me, it would take far less time." Han Li silently stood in place without a change of expression and waited for her to continue, confident that the beauty still had more to say. As Yuan Yao stared at Han Li, she slowly said, "However, before the formation is broken, this young woman would like to reach an agreement with you." "What agreement? Tell me." Han Li crossed his arms and attentively gazed at her. "So long as Brother Han is willing to renounce the treasure inside, I will be willing to compensate you." "Compensate?" Han Li remained expressionless as he continued to watch her. Yuan Yao revealed hesitation. After lowering her head and muttering to herself for a moment, she raised her head with a resolute expression. She solemnly said, "I'm willing to hand over a bit of myriad-year spirit milk as compensation. What does Brother Han think?" Han Li's expression stirred. Myriad-year spirit milk. Legend says that only a small mouthful would be able to restore one's magic power in an instant. It is said that even 10,000 spirit stones cannot buy even a single drop of it. That's spirit milk. Yuan Yao stared at Han Li with bright eyes and slowly said, "That's right. Since I trust you, I've taken the risk to tell you. There is no way that Brother Han would kill this young lady over treasure, yes." After traveling together with Han Li through the ghost mist and the paths of fire and ice, Yuan Yao recognized that while Han Li wasn't an upright gentleman, neither was he a ruthless and vicious wretch. Of course, if she possessed any other treasures that could entice Han Li, she would have mentioned them instead. Although she thought it wasn't likely for Han Li to attack her, her hand still casually fell to the storage pouches at her waist. Although she knew she was Han Li's match, she still had a few mighty life-saving treasures that could protect her against any foul intentions Han Li might have. This was precisely why she had dared to mention the spirit milk in the first place. Han Li rubbed his nose and remained silent. Then, he turned his head towards the dragon head statue with a contemplative expression. Yuan Yao's tone turned soft as she said, "It seems Brother Han has figured it out. My myriad-year spirit milk was something that had been accumulated in the spirit spring for over 10,000 years. But with this, fellow Taoist Han should know that I am not deceiving him." Han Li calmly nodded his head. "That's right. With such a large spirit spring being so cleverly hidden, it's reasonable that a bit of spirit milk was produced." Yuan Yao's expression blossomed and her eyes brightly shined. "So what does fellow Taoist Han think?" Han Li looked at Yuan Yao with a chilling, ice-cold gaze and asked, "Could young lady Yuan tell me what treasure is concealed within? Since fellow Taoist Yuan is so willing to pay me such an exorbitant price, then the treasure must be worth even more." When Yuan Yao saw Han Li's expression, for some unknown reason, she felt a chill run down her spine and she began to panic. "Brother Han is quite funny. This is the first time this young woman has been here, so how could I know what lies inside? Brother Han is quite suspicious. Fine, fine, I'll tell the truth. I know what the treasure inside is. Although its worth is about equivalent to the myriad-year spirit milk, it is far more important to me. That is why I was willing to give the spirit milk to you. The treasure is an unrefined soul-nurturing tree." Yuan Yao had initially attempted to play it off as a joke, but when she saw Han Li's gaze grow colder, she hastily revealed the truth. For some unknown reason, she felt trepidation and fear at the thought of their relations turning hostile. Han Li was stunned for quite some time before asking in amazement, "One of the three divine woods, capable of being worn on the body and nourishing the primal spirit to slowly strengthen one's spiritual sense?" After some thought, her expression sank and she softly said, "That's the one. However, I'm not interested in the soul-nurturing effects, but rather its ability to preserve and house one's soul, preventing their spiritual sense from scattering." Spirit-nurturing wood and myriad-year spirit milk. Han Li stared at the ceiling as he muttered to himself. Chapter 498, Distinguishing the Truth. Han Li turned towards Yuan Yao and leisurely said, "So that's why there was a spirit spring placed here. It was to nourish the tree. I do desire the myriad-year spirit milk, but the soul-nourishing tree is also quite interesting." Upon hearing that, Yuan Yao's expression instantly became ice-cold. "Relax. Having so many years of rich nourishment, the tree can't be small, and I only want a portion of its roots. I won't fight over the trunk, the most important part of the tree." Yuan Yao's expression softened, but her eyes contained a trace of doubt. "You only want the roots?" Han Li said with a blank expression. "Naturally, I also want the myriad-year spirit milk that you offered to me earlier as well." Yuan Yao's eyes slightly shifted as she made her own conclusions about Han Li's intentions. She sweetly chuckled, "Hee. Brother Han is quite shrewd. The soul-nourishing tree's roots will certainly fetch a high price from many sects. Regardless, I will agree to those terms." Even with this, she was still relieved. Han Li smiled and offered no further explanation. Yuan Yao chuckled, "Let us start on breaking through the formation. I'll give fellow Taoist Han an explanation of what I've learned about the formation spell." It seemed as though she was in even more of a hurry than Han Li. "Before we start, I must ask whether or not Lady Yuan plans on taking the spirit spring." Han Li pointed to the pond with a mysterious smile. Yuan Yao coquettishly said, "Is Brother Han joking? This spirit spring has been bonded with the entire inner halls by the master of Heaven Void Hall using profound restrictions. Had I possessed the ability to take it, I would have directly aimed for the Heaven Void Cauldron instead of hiding down here. When Han Li heard this, he appeared slightly disappointed, but after some thought he broke out into laughter. It seems he had become far too greedy. Upon spotting a treasure, he thought to immediately acquire it. This was not a good omen. If this were to continue, he would likely meet his death as a result of greed. With that thought, Han Li steadied his mind before continuing with a solemn voice. Fellow Taoist Yuan should hand over the spirit milk first before we start talking about the formation spell. With our combined efforts, we'll be able to break through the formation in no more than 2 days. When Yuan Yao heard this, her sweet smile was replaced with a ghastly expression. 2 days later, about 20 kilometers away from Heaven Void Hall, a man and woman emerged from a flash of white light above the sea. The man appeared quite ordinary. Apart from his clear eyes, there was nothing exceptional about his appearance. As for the woman, she was as dainty as a flower, and her bright, lively eyes suggested that her grace was limitless. When the two emerged, they vigilantly examined their surroundings. Upon seeing that there were no other cultivators nearby, they both let out a sigh of relief. The pair were Han Li and Yuan Yao, who had broken through the formation of the secret room. Yuan Yao gazed in the direction of Heaven Void Hall with an odd expression. It seems the others are still trapped in Heaven Void Hall. They won't be coming out for some time. Would those nascent soul eccentrics do the same as us and seize treasure to escape the halls? Han Li hadn't relaxed his guard and frowned. Yuan Yao casually brushed her hair and softly said, "Be at ease. After acquiring the treasure, one will be teleported to a random location. It can be anywhere from next to Heaven Void Hall to several hundred kilometers away. It is impossible for anyone to be monitoring such an expansive area." Good, Han Li nodded his head with peace of mind. Yuan Yao blinked at him and she probingly asked, "What? Could it be that Brother Han has offended those nascent soul eccentrics? If that's the case, then you had best be careful." Fellow Taoist Yuan need not worry herself about me. As I have matters I must attend to, I will be taking my leave first. Han Li expressionlessly cupped his hands to Yuan Yao and shot across the sky as a streak of azure light. He displayed neither reluctance to leave nor any desire to hear her response. When Yuan Yao saw Han Li abruptly fly off, she was flabbergasted. After a long while, she eventually shook her head. She then extended her hand and summoned a foot-long block of wood with a flash of black light. The wood was rough and scorched, appearing ugly by all means. But when Yuan Yao looked at it, she revealed sadness. "Big Sister Yan, please wait just a few more days. I will find someone to refine this wood into a soulkeeper box and help you escape having your soul refined." After she softly said this, she donned her hood, concealing her astonishing beauty, and transformed into a cloud of black chi before flying off in another direction. In the blink of an eye, the sea became calm once more. Meanwhile, several people solemnly stood on the platform of the 5th floor of Heaven Void Hall with unsightly expressions. They were the 6 nascent soul cultivators who had apparently come to some sort of agreement, as Man Husey was standing there without being attacked. "We've already searched every corner of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. Even after breaking through countless restrictions and puppets, we've yet to find any sign of them. Zenith Yin, 2 of the 3 have a deep relationship with you. Did you not instruct them to seize the treasure and escape?" Wan Tianming spoke with an ashen expression. Zenith Yin's cheek twitched and his face grimaced. "Humph, Sect Master Wan, you've already asked that several times and my reply is still that my grandson has met his end. As I personally used a secret technique to search for him, I cannot be mistaken. Were it not for the obstruction of the Tailstar Formation, I would have felt the instant my grandson perished and would have prevented those other 2 youngsters from running off with the treasure." Zenith Yin stared at Man Husey and gloomily said, "With that said, I personally believe Man Husey to be the most suspicious. Why did Man Husey draw us away for enough time for the Heaven Void Cauldron to be seized? Man Husey is also unwilling to reveal the history behind that junior of his. Could it be that you colluded with that youngster beforehand?" Man Husey glared back at him and bluntly mocked him. "Ridiculous, what do I have to reveal to you? What do I have to do with that youngster running off with the Heaven Void Cauldron? I was busy escaping from everyone, but that isn't enough evidence to say that I helped him. Rather, you claim that Wu Chu is dead. Who's to say that's true? Perhaps you are actually filled to the brim with happiness." "You?" Zenith Yin was seething with anger. His beloved grandson had died, and now he was being made out to be a scapegoat. He wasn't about to take this silently, but when he was about to engage in a furious argument, Xianxia interrupted him in an attempt to alleviate tensions. Brother Man and Brother Wu have no reason to dispute. The ones who took the treasure were amongst those three. As for who it was, what do we care? That's secondary. What is most important is that we find them, regardless of if they are alive or dead. As of now, we've already set up a formation at the entrance to the third floor, preventing them from escaping. Breaking into any of the secret rooms above the second floor is an impossibility for them. As they are all only early core formation cultivators, even if the three of them joined hands, they would be incapable of progressing through a room on the third floor or higher. Unless, of course, they've lost their heads and decided to commit suicide in the attempt. However, we've searched the entirety of floors 3 through 5 without finding even a trace, Wan Tianming coldly said with a suspicious expression. It wasn't just him. All three of the righteous Dao cultivators were skeptical. It held voice transmission conversations several times already, and believed the most likely explanation to be that the three devil Dao eccentrics were playing an elaborate ruse. They had deliberately drawn them away and allowed their juniors to seize the heaven void cauldron. Thus, while the three felt great remorse, they also vigilantly watched the actions of the devil Dao cultivators, completely unwilling to allow the devil Dao cultivators to leave their sights. The devil Dao cultivators naturally understood the intentions of Wan Tianming's party. However, they were also burning with impatience, but could nothing. All they wanted to do was quickly find Han Li and the others so they could take the heaven void cauldron. As the nascent soul cultivators were bitterly feuding in the inner halls, the core formation cultivators had already taken advantage of the chaos to escape with the treasure. If this news were to spread, they would become laughingstocks. Furthermore, how could they allow the heaven void cauldron to fall into the hands of Han Li and the others? Man Husey was also at a loss as the Bone Sage wasn't acting in accordance with their earlier agreement. Could it be that he truly had fled with the cauldron? Were it a common core formation cultivator, it'd be impossible for them to break through the restrictions of a third-floor secret room. However, if we're the renegade ghost Dao cultivator, the Bone Sage, it would be possible. Although suspicions began to spring into his mind, Man Husey didn't betray any of this in the slightest. But because he felt the need to muddy the waters to distance himself from this matter, he said with a cold tone, "Do you think it could be that the Star Palace elders still haven't left and had actually remained hidden nearby? When they saw us run out, they could have taken the chance to slay the three core formation cultivators and acquire the heaven void cauldron." When they heard Man Husey, they each looked at one another in dismay and then displayed pensive expressions. Chapter 499, Wolf Artifact Spirit. As Han Li continued to fly far away from Yuan Yao, he felt an impatient urge to take out the heaven void cauldron and examine the contents. Shortly after giving in to this urge, Han Li felt like spitting blood. No matter what methods he used, the cauldron lid wouldn't open in the slightest. Regardless of whether he wildly poured magic power into the cauldron, or struck the cauldron with his magic treasure out of frustration, the only response would be a flicker of blue light. Han Li eventually managed to momentarily calm down and consider his situation. Apart from being able to shrink and enlarge the heaven void cauldron at will, there wasn't anything he could do with it. Having determined this, Han Li vented his frustrations in the barren seas for a long while. The target of his groundless insults was naturally the master of Heaven Void Hall. It was clear that the master of Heaven Void Hall was a strange individual. It wasn't that a nascent soul cultivation was needed, but rather that a trick needed to be used to open the cauldron. It wasn't as simple as pouring spiritual power into the cauldron. Could it be that opening it had something to do with the celestial ice flames that had surrounded it? With his mind clouded by emotion, Han Li could only make some muddled guesses. But after some further thought, it seemed rather normal that the top-ranked secret treasure in the scattered star seas would require some sort of trick. After only a short moment, he was able to discover two of the ancient treasure's remarkable abilities. Its simplest ability was activated by pouring spiritual power into it, producing a red and yellow barrier around the user's body. He had personally witnessed its power inside Heaven Void Hall when he saw it block Layman Kingy's grasp without the slightest harm done to it. Its defensive capabilities were clearly immense. Its other ability required Han Li to silently mutter an ancient incantation to the scepter. After he immersed his spiritual sense into both ends of the scepter, he would be able to either separately summon two small wolves, with one red and the other yellow, or he could summon one large silver wolf. The small red wolf seemed to be created from pure fire attribute spiritual chi, and was innately capable of many impressive fire spirit magic techniques. Similar to its counterpart, the small yellow wolf was created from pure earth attribute spiritual chi and was adept in earth spirit magic techniques. There were a few techniques that Han Li had previously learned, but he was quite surprised to find that the wolf didn't understand earth attribute movement techniques. As for the silver wolf, Han Li found it quite troublesome. He was incapable of controlling it. Although the silver wolf would respond to his orders, it would always move quite lazily. When he ordered the wolf to display what magic techniques it was capable of, the silver wolf brushed him off as if it hadn't heard him. Han Li was rendered speechless when he saw the human-like insolence in its eyes. Han Li was able to make out that the silver wolf was clearly the true form of the scepter's artifact spirit. As for the silver wolf's stubborn disobedience, Han Li could only guess that it was likely due to him having yet to completely refine the scepter. However, Han Li had clearly remembered the astonishment that the Bone Sage had revealed upon seeing it. He had even released his gold lightning bamboo arrow in the presence of Zenith Yin for it. There was undoubtedly more to the silver wolf artifact spirit than meets the eye. As a result, Han Li put away the Jade scepter without the slightest discouragement, and decided to take a look at the other treasures he had gained in Heaven Void Hall. There were the many treasures that the old devils had given him, the white rhino emblem, the glacial ice pearl, the royal scale plate, and so on. Although he had found nothing wrong with them after further inspection, he didn't dare to continue wearing them and place them all in his storage pouch, apart from the royal scale plate. Han Li was unwilling to forego its extraordinary defensive abilities and decided to have it remain on his body. As for the puppet fragments, the half-bottle of myriad-year spirit milk, and the half-finger-long root of the soul-nurturing tree, Han Li also examined them. As he rummaged through his new gains, Han Li had unintentionally found a few small rainbow beads. This had surprised him, but he soon remembered where they had come from. When he had first discovered the transportation formation at the Heavenly South region, he melted the rainbow skeleton, producing these rainbow beads as a result. With the blooded spiders nearby the skeleton, it seemed that the skeleton had belonged to the Bone Sage's other treasonous disciple, Zenith Brilliance. However, Han Li still felt quite confused on why the skeleton was rainbow, and what relation it had with the Emperor of Yue. But as he gazed at the beads, Han Li was reminded of the Heaven Men pills that had flown out of the Heaven Void Cauldron. However, those pills were much larger and also shined with a far brighter light. Han Li gazed at the beads in his hand and muttered to himself for a moment before putting them away with a solemn expression. Afterwards, Han Li verified his direction and donned his blood-red cloak before shooting off full speed ahead. He tore through the sky towards Heavenly Star City as a red shooting star. Although he lost a large quantity of spiritual power by doing this, it was several times faster than the speed of a common core formation cultivator. Currently, he wanted to return to his cave residence as soon as possible, preferably before the other cultivators even left Heaven Void Hall. It would have been possible for him to abandon the residence were it not for the meticulously raised gold-devouring beetles he had left behind. He was unwilling to allow those insects to fall into the hands of some future excavator. Perhaps the plunderer would also possess a secret technique to hasten their maturation as well. Besides, he had already decided to immediately renounce his cave residence after returning to Heavenly Star City, and use the city's transportation formation to teleport him to the outer star seas. This way, he could both acquire more demon cores and avoid any of the attention he had attracted during his time in Heaven Void Hall, allowing him to break through the early core formation stage as soon as possible. After Han Li lost a majority of his magic power, he stopped using his cloak and switched to his normal method of flight as he held a mid-grade spirit stone to slowly recover his magic power. When his magic power was just about restored, he resumed his use of the blood-red cape and hurriedly tore through the sky. In this manner, Han Li was able to travel a distance that would have normally taken him half a month in the span of a few short days. On the way, Han Li had encountered a few cultivators, but they were only at the foundation establishment stage or lower. He was disinclined to pay them any notice and hurriedly shot past them. When they saw the speed of Han Li's streak of light, they naturally knew that he was a core formation expert and didn't dare to bother him. But as Han Li drew closer to Heavenly Star City, he began to encounter cultivators at greater frequency, even spotting groups that could be considered an army. After a month had gone by, Han Li finally encountered his first core formation cultivator. When this cultivator saw Han Li, he vigilantly avoided him and clearly didn't have any intention of talking with him. This was completely understandable, but when he saw two more core formation cultivators act in the same way, Han Li felt that something was amiss. Could it be that a significant event had occurred while he was in the Heaven Void Hall? When this thought emerged, Han Li grew worried as he hurried along his way. One day, when Han Li was slowly flying across the sea with a spirit stone in hand, he spotted a group of about 8 cultivators flying nearby. They were all at Foundation establishment and seemed to belong to some local power. Han Li wordlessly flew towards them as a streak of azure light. Han Li didn't conceal himself, allowing the group of cultivators to see him approach. They raised an uproar, but the old man in charge berated them, causing them to stay still. Although the old man in charge had fully whitened hair, he was quite intelligent. Without waiting for Han Li to draw close, he took the initiative to respectfully salute him and asked, "What can these juniors help senior with?" His mannerisms didn't hold the slightest flaw. The azure light faded away before them to reveal Han Li. He indifferently swept his gaze past them and calmly asked, "What sect do you belong to and where are you headed?" The old man solemnly replied, "These juniors belong to the 3 Immortals sect. We are under orders from the sect master to head to Heavenly Star City." Han Li frowned and grew silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Heading to Heavenly Star City. Along the way, I've discovered that there were many cultivators heading towards Heavenly Star City as well. However, they appeared quite nervous." The old man inwardly sighed, but he hastily laughed. "Ha ha! It seems Senior must have spent quite some time in a desolate area to not have heard of this. Not long ago, a great event occurred at Heavenly Star City. All the closest sects and powers have begun to send people to the city." A paragon of chill. Chapter 500, The Starfall Coalition. Han Li spoke with an indifferent expression. "What great event? I only left seclusion a few days ago. Tell me about it." The old man locked his fingers together and spoke carefully. "It is only natural for Junior to answer Senior's questions. However, may I ask for your name?" After he heard this, Han Li felt somewhat surprised. After he tilted his head and pondered for a moment, he mysteriously smiled and said, "It seems that you're being quite careful. I am the Exquisite Sound Sect's guest Elder Han. Have you heard of me before?" After he heard of Han Li's identity, he let out a long sigh of relief and smiled. "So it turns out to be Elder Han. You can't be considered an outsider then. Our own sect's Fairy Zudi is close friends with Sect Master Fairy Violet Spirit." Han Li was surprised at his claim that they were on the same side, and couldn't help but laugh. Han Li's laugh caused the old man to grow somewhat uneasy. "Did I say something wrong?" the old man thought apprehensively. Han Li's smile disappeared. "I don't involve myself in the matters of the sect, nor do I care if you are lying. All I want is for you to properly answer my question. I won't make things difficult for you. What major event occurred recently?" The old man pledged he was speaking the truth with a smile. "How could I deceive you, Senior? All of my words are true." But when Han Li's gaze grew icy, he immediately started his explanation. There were rumors that had suddenly emerged recently in the scattered star seas that the heavenly star sages were on the verge of breaking through to the great success stage of divine essence-effused light. Star Palace took advantage of this opportunity to start eliminating certain disobedient or uncontrollable powers. This was originally believed to only be a rumor, but not longer after this rumor was spread, the Star Palace issued an official command to powers of all sizes to have their sect leaders and island lords immediately come to Heavenly Star City and pay audience to the Heavenly Star Sages. Otherwise, they will be branded as traitors and be eliminated. Han Li blinked before speaking with disbelief. "Have every power pay audience to the Heavenly Star Sages? Did I hear correctly?" The Star Palace gave such an obviously insidious command. The old man bitterly smiled. "That's right. The official command stunned many powers upon arrival. Were this at the peak of the Star Palace's power, there would be no problem with this order. But as of current, it would be surprising for the powers of the righteous and devil Dao to obey." Han Li swept his gaze past the group and frowned, asking, "Then all of the cultivators I saw on the way were heading towards Heavenly Star City to pay audience to the Heavenly Star Sages?" "That's hard to say." The old man appeared hesitant. A strange expression appeared on Han Li's face. He curiously asked, "Hard to say, what does that mean?" The old man continued with a helpless expression. "Senior, there are some things I still haven't said. Soon after the Heavenly Star Palace issued the command, the righteous and devilish Dao suddenly formed the Starfall Coalition, in proclamation of smashing apart the Star Palace's hegemony in the scattered star seas and ending their reign." The righteous Tao has dispatched their enforcement elder Wan Sangu, and the devil Tao dispatched their towering hero, the archsaint of the Six Paths, as the two leaders of Starfall Coalition. After the alliance was established, many sects belonging to the righteous and devilish Tao began joining under their banner. Unaffiliated powers have also joined them, and several tens of rogue nascent soul paragons have been appointed as elders in the alliance. In addition, the Starfall Coalition copied the Star Palace and made their own proclamation with what is known as the Starfall Coalition's Ghost Crest, proclaiming that any power to respond to the Star Palace will be branded as their enemy without exception. In addition, they claim that they will soon be launching an attack on Heavenly Star City and welcome all powers to witness the battle and make their allegiances clear. Having heard this, Han Li's expression remained completely indifferent, but his mind was left in a daze. This was beyond imagination. Such a massive event had occurred in the short time he had been stuck in Heaven Void Hall. For some time, Han Li was at a loss, but his mind suddenly stirred and he calmly gazed at the old man, asking, "What is the Starfall Coalition's Ghost Crest? Do you have it on hand?" The old man was stunned for a moment before enthusiastically replying, "It is in my sect master's possession, but if Senior desires, I have a record of it on a jade slip that I can show him." "Yes, let's see it." Han Li nodded with an indifferent expression. The old man immediately searched his storage pouch for a yellow jade slip and hastily handed it over to Han Li. Han Li bluntly took it and quickly immersed his spiritual sense into it. A second later, he felt shocked. The crest appeared to be the same as the ghost head that the Six United Palaces elder showed Wu Chu long ago. Although there were slight differences in appearance, it held a near-exact resemblance. It seemed that the righteous and devil Tao had long colluded in secret, infiltrating other powers for many years with meticulous care. Han Li was amazed and expressionlessly returned the jade slip to the old man. Han Li casually said, "Since that is the case, you must be drawing close to Heavenly Star City so that you may observe the results of the battle and come to a decision afterwards." The old man revealed a trace of embarrassment. "That's right, Senior. Under the command of our sect master, we are to head over and examine the situation. After all, our three Immortals sect isn't a large organization and can only choose to be pragmatic. However, in this short amount of time, Starfall Coalition has already launched an attack on the Outer Star Islands and has successfully taken them over. There were even islands that defected to the Starfall Coalition. It seemed that the Inner Star Islands will soon be attacked as well. There are also a few scoundrels that have taken advantage of the situation to stir up havoc. Many rogue cultivators have ended up dead in the wilderness, and no small number of small sects have ended up thoroughly exterminated." The old man's worrying words explained why so many cultivators had been so cautious as they traveled. Han Li was very satisfied with the old man's answer and calmly said, "So it was like that. All right, since you have answered my questions, you may leave. Then us juniors will hastily set off." The old man rejoiced at Han Li's words and respectfully said his farewells before hastily leading the group away. Although he saw that Han Li wasn't an evil and vicious character, he couldn't help but feel apprehensive in the presence of an unfamiliar core formation cultivator. Han Li stood motionlessly in place as he muttered to himself. A huge war has erupted between the Star Palace and the alliance of the righteous and devilish Tao. On the bright side, this war would certainly take up the nascent soul eccentric's attention. As they were aligned to either side, it would be impossible for them to avoid participating in the war. As such, he would be far safer as they wouldn't be able to dedicate their time to tracking him or the Heaven Void Cauldron down. Conversely, the war would make it rather troublesome for him to return to Heavenly Star City. At the very least, the cultivators entering the city would be thoroughly inspected, especially a core formation cultivator such as himself. Furthermore, if a battle were to erupt in the city before he returned, he would be unable to enter. The Star Palace would likely bar any cultivators from entering during that time. With that thought, he let out a sigh. In the following few days, he intercepted several more low-level cultivators and asked them the same questions, only to receive similar answers. As a result, Han Li was now floating above the sea, blankly staring off into the distance with a face of hesitation. He raised his head to look at the blue sky and flipped his hand, causing a small azure bottle to appear. Han Li helplessly looked at the small bottle. Using the myriad-year spirit milk so soon seemed like an immense waste, but if he didn't hurry, the Starfall Coalition would launch an attack. His plans of entering Heavenly Star City and escaping to the Outer Star Seas through their transportation formations would then become null. After a long while of contemplation, Han Li eventually opened the bottle with gritted teeth and carefully poured several drops of thick, transparent liquid into his mouth. Afterwards, he placed the bottle away and put on his blood-red cloak before suddenly shooting through the sky and disappearing from sight. Half a month later, when Han Li had nearly exhausted his magic power, he took another few drops of spirit milk and continued to hurry on his way through the use of the blood-red cape. As a result, Han Li was able to travel at a speed similar to that of common nascent soul cultivators and greatly reduced his travel time. Along the way, the few core formation cultivators that he came across had mistaken Han Li to be a nascent soul expert and steered clear of his path. As expected, there weren't any cultivators that dared to even think of bothering a nascent soul expert. Chapter 501, South Clear Island. Inspiring awe in all those who witnessed his passage, Han Li eventually arrived in the nearby seas of the Heavenly Star City. As he was only a few days away, Han Li put away his blood-red cloak and resumed traveling as an ordinary streak of light. Currently, the scattered star seas were in disarray, and it was possible that a nascent soul cultivator would be nearby. As Han Li didn't wish to capture the attention of such a powerful individual, he moved in a more inconspicuous manner. Fortunately, he hadn't heard any news of the Starfall Coalition appearing nearby. Much to his relief, it seemed he had managed to arrive in time. He had arrived at the outskirts of the last intermediary island before Heavenly Star City. Although it wasn't large, it held many cultivators from the Star Palace. It seemed they were the forward sentries for Heavenly Star City. In the past, the island would have boats of all sizes flowing in and out of its harbor with cultivators and mortals leaving and arriving at the island en masse. But now, when Han Li swept his gaze past the island, he only spotted a few small boats. As for cultivators, he would only occasionally come across them. It seemed both the mortals and cultivators knew that a war was imminent and meekly avoided the area for the time being. The only cultivators that dared to come to the island were mostly from factions wishing to scour through the rumors. Having traveled for such a long period, Han Li felt somewhat fatigued and decided to stop over at the island for the time being. Not only to rest, but to visit the island's market in preparation for his long excursion in the outer star seas. After all, he didn't know how things currently were in Heavenly Star City. As such, it would be best for him to make his preparations here and avoid any mishaps from catching him unprepared. When Han Li descended within range of the island, he was able to sense that South Clear Island was on far greater alert than during his previous visits. Just as he entered the scope of the island's spell formation, he was able to feel the spiritual sense of 3 core formation cultivators sweep past him. They had even lingered on him for quite some time until they had deemed him unsuspicious. It was clear that the Star Palace was guarding itself against any sudden attacks by the Starfall Coalition. At that moment, Han Li was calmly heading towards the island's market. South Clear Island's market was in a small city not far from the island's port, likely for the convenience of any merchants or cultivators that visited. Although the market wasn't nearly as famous or as large as those on other islands, its variety of goods was unrivaled by any other market. More importantly, its prices were cheaper than in Heavenly Star City. This was because a majority of Heavenly Star City's goods were directly shipped over from this island. Han Li didn't have any time to dawdle. Just as he entered the market, he took out the Bone Sage's 9-curl ginseng pill formula and read through it. Now knowing the required ingredients by heart, he bluntly began to search through ingredient stores of all sizes. Inside a large room, an ordinary middle-aged cultivator said with a careful tone, "Senior, I am truly sorry. Junior has opened a materials shop for so many years, yet he had never heard of Thousand Leaves Dew before. As for agate horn, it is the horn that is grown off of the rare agate beast. Few cultivators ever get to see it. I fear Senior will have to go look through other stores or auction halls to see if they have it. This is the largest materials shop on the island. If you don't have it, then the other shops won't either. As for the auction halls, I currently do not have the time for them." Han Li frowned and sat down in the chair across from the middle-aged cultivator. He softly tapped his finger against the side of the chair in annoyance. The middle-aged cultivator revealed slight embarrassment at Han Li's words. However, he was being honest when he said that he had no way of acquiring the items that Han Li wanted. As such, he could only continue to ingratiatingly smile. After all, he was in the presence of a rarely seen core formation expert. He could not afford to offend him. When Han Li saw the shopkeeper's attitude, he knew that he truly didn't have the 2 items. With a sigh, Han Li stood up and walked out. It seemed that he would have to think of other methods to find the last two ingredients for the ninth spirit ginseng. Fortunately, he was still quite a long way from the peak of core formation. As the medicine could only be used upon the formation of a nascent soul, he wasn't in any rush. Just as the middle-aged cultivator was about to respectfully send Han Li off from the entrance, he suddenly thought of something and hesitated for a moment before saying, "While you might know of its name as the Thousand Leaves do, it may be known by another name." A strange light flickered from Han Li's eyes and he stopped, curiously asking, "Oh, what does that mean?" The middle-aged man honestly replied, "Not to boast, but this junior has spent over 100 years managing this ingredient store. I've seen all sorts of bizarre and rare ingredients. If there is an ingredient I haven't heard of, it is likely being referred to by the name passed down from ancient cultivators. In current times, it may be known by another title. This was something that I have encountered several times before. This thousand leaves might actually be a rather common medicinal ingredient." Han Li's heart stirred. He felt that the man's words made much sense. After all, the ninth spirit ginseng was an item from legend. It made sense for its formula to be passed down from antiquity. It seems he would have to examine a few ancient records to find out its true identity. With that thought, Han Li nodded with a relaxed expression and silently left the store. Afterwards, Han Li sifted through all of his pill formulas suitable for core formation cultivators and made preparations for his future pill refinement. Han Li especially stocked up on the supplementary ingredients that couldn't be grown with the liquid from his small bottle. The current journey to the outer star seas would take a long while without doubt. Han Li didn't wish for his mass creation of pills to fail because of a shortage of common materials, and slow down his own progress in cultivation as a result. With his current collection of magic treasures along with the aid of a few flag formations, he should be able to handle grade 7 demon beasts without question. Naturally, if he were to come across any grade 8 demon beasts, he would have no choice but to flee. Once demon beasts reached grade 8, it is said that their wisdom would be far greater than ordinary humans, and their bodies are able to take human-like forms. Due to their exceedingly powerful innate skills, they would have a tremendous advantage over nascent soul cultivators of the same rank. Several hours later, Han Li managed to gather everything together and left the market city in the direction of the port. At that moment, the sky suddenly filled with black clouds, turning the sky into the image of a cloudy night. A short moment later, a relentless barrage of light shot towards the island from the horizon, leaving roars of thunder in its wake. Han Li's expression suddenly changed, and he hastily strained his magic power, tearing through the sky in an azure streak. From the pressure being emitted, it seemed that the barrage came from the simultaneous attack of at least 1,000 cultivators. In the following moment, a large formation activated and covered the entire island in a barrier of scarlet light, managing to rigidly block the attack. At the same moment, there were many white-clothed cultivators that struck back at the attackers in the sky with their own magic tools. Han Li bitterly laughed. The Starfall Coalition had moved remarkably quick. They even managed to bring the battle so close to Heavenly Star Island in only a few months. Heavenly Star City would surely receive news of this sudden battle through specialized means. Now, his current plans of rushing towards Heavenly Star City had been completely ruined. Extremely vexed, Han Li's expression fluctuated for a long while before he suddenly stamped his foot on the ground. Then, with a series of distortions, his body disappeared from sight. Although he was disinclined to involve himself in the battle, he still stealthily released his spiritual sense. If he had guessed correctly, the harbor and its surroundings should be quite active. As expected, many streaks of light soon shot towards Southclear Island's harbor from inside the island. But as they grew closer, they all disappeared from sight, quietly laying low as they observed the battle unfolding above. A majority of them were Foundation establishment cultivators, numbering over 100, with only about 30 chi condensation cultivators mixed among them. As for core formation cultivators like Han Li, there were only 5 or 6, with the highest-ranked cultivator being at the mid-core formation stage. Although this person was silently watching from the cover of the hills, Han Li's spiritual sense was vastly superior to his, allowing Han Li to observe him without being noticed. While Han Li's spiritual sense wasn't as powerful as a nascent soul cultivator's, by cultivating the Great Development technique, it wasn't that much weaker either. Since he could even conceal himself from a nearby early nascent soul cultivator, it was only natural for him to be able to do this much. To the best of his knowledge, A majority of nascent soul cultivators lingered at early nascent soul stage without any hope of advancement, and much to his relief, he couldn't sense such a monster nearby. However, since the Starfall Coalition dared to attack Southclear Island, there should be at least one nascent soul cultivator in the main host. As such, Han Li could only conceal himself and meekly wait for the conclusion of the battle before stealthily slipping away. Chapter 502, Questioning. The battle at the harbor didn't continue for long. As the red barrier released glimmers of light from the impact by the multicolored barrage, an immense gray radiance brimming with evil chi suddenly struck it. With the assistance of the dense bombardment of magic tools and techniques, the great formation eventually began to waver. With a series of booms, the red barrier violently flickered and eventually ruptured with a sharp explosion. Unknown whether it was due to the formation spell's might or the Star Palace's own doing, the fragments of the red light barrier slowly spread through the sky in a final burst of radiance, sowing chaos throughout the ranks of the Star Defiance Coalition. As if having planned for this, the Star Palace cultivators took advantage of the opportunity to escape. Among the escaping cultivators, there were those that shot out of the harbor at exceptional speed. They seemed to be the high-grade cultivators that had remained on the island. At nearly the same time, over 10 streaks of similarly powerful light shot after them in close pursuit. In the blink of an eye, the streaks of light had disappeared without a trace. It seems the upper echelon of the Star Defiance Coalition wanted to get rid of all of the Star Palace cultivators on Southclear Island in one clean swoop, without allowing even a single to escape. At that moment, the many cultivators of the Star Defiance Coalition began to slowly descend from the sky. From their clothes, it was clear to see that the group consisted of people from two different sects. One of the uniform consisted of silver robes lined with gold, while the other was completely green robes. It appeared that both the righteous and devilish Tao were acting together. Han Li felt quite surprised at how quickly the battle had concluded, but he soon made sense of it. There was a vast difference in power between the defenders and attackers. While the Star Palace had done their utmost, their will alone couldn't compensate for the sheer lack of numbers. As Han Li was wondering whether or not he should take advantage of the disorder to escape from the island, an old man flew out from the group of green-robed cultivators. When Han Li swept his spiritual sense past him, he perceived the old man to be an early core formation cultivator. The man calmly flew above the spectators by the harbor and swept his gaze over them. He then said with a deep voice, "Listen well, fellow Taoists. Under the orders of Elder Wang of the Star Defiance Coalition, I, Enforcer Kang Yunlong, announce that the Star Palace has been rooted from the island. In order to prevent any misunderstandings, I hope none of you will hastily attempt to leave the island. For the next 4 hours, we will be pursuing the remnants of the Star Palace forces. Everyone may leave after that. I ask that everyone please remain calm. Our alliance only holds malice towards the Star Palace and their allies. We won't act against any other fellow Taoists." Although his voice wasn't very loud, it was clear and resounding, allowing all of the nearby cultivators to hear him clearly. The cultivators that were concealed nearby couldn't help but look at each other. Since no one took the initiative to spread or to stir up any trouble, the following moments were filled with complete silence. When Han Li heard this proclamation, he felt relieved. It seemed that in order to win over the hearts of others, they were unwilling to treat neutral cultivators unfairly. If he was going to be somewhat late, then so be it. Even if he were to leave now, it was still uncertain whether or not he would be able to sneak into the city. Just as Han Li thought this, the green-robed old man wordlessly flew back. When Han Li saw the old man disappear, he didn't immediately take action. Perhaps due to the old man's words or their missions, the other cultivators also didn't depart from the port. Instead, they closely watched the actions of the Starfall Coalition. At that moment, the silver-robed cultivators were dismantling the formation in an orderly fashion and started to place down their own formation spell. As for the green-robed cultivators, half of them stayed near the harbor on guard, while the others flew right past Han Li towards the center of the island. It appeared that Southclear Island was about to become the beachhead through which the coalition would launch their attacks on Heavenly Star City. Seeing these cultivators silently carrying out their orders with such discipline was quite a shock to Han Li. It seemed the righteous and devil Tao had long planned for their rise to supremacy in the scattered star seas. After all, training such disciplined cultivators wasn't a matter of only a mere several tens of years. However, Han Li felt quite baffled that the Star Palace would choose to passively wait for the Starfall Coalition to attack. Were they so weak that they couldn't counterattack, or was the Star Palace merely stalling for time, so the heavenly star sages could have a chance to leave seclusion. Han Li felt quite puzzled by this, but after some more thought, he broke out into laughter. Regardless of what plans and hidden intrigue the Star Palace and the Starfall Coalition may have in store, they had absolutely nothing to do with a rogue cultivator such as himself. So long as he went out of his way to be careful, there shouldn't be any way for him to become wrapped up in their schemes. With that thought, Han Li regained his calm once more. After patiently waiting for 4 hours, the green-robed old man and 3 more core formation cultivators returned to the harbor. As the old man floated in midair, he said with a clear voice, "Fellow Taoists, if you wish to leave the island, you merely have to either display a token of your identity or show us your cultivation art. If you do not wish to leave, then you may continue to stay here. So long as you possess no enmity with the Starfall Coalition, you will be treated fairly." After these words were said, there was a moment of uproar before silence returned. Although the words sounded polite, no one wished to reveal themselves. Righteous Tao cultivators were particularly disinclined to reveal themselves to these devil Tao cultivators, as their previous relations weren't particularly great. If they had made a previous indiscretion and caused offense, they would be damning themselves by moving forward. Although the possibility was quite small, they didn't wish to test the waters themselves, and would rather have others brave the risk instead. Han Li also remained still, as he wasn't about to make himself stand out either. As the opposition was only core formation cultivators, he could remain concealed with ease as their spiritual sense was incapable of detecting him. After a long moment of silence, when the green-robed man started to appear gloomy, a white streak of light eventually flew towards him. A young man obediently flew before the old man and respectfully saluted him. "Junior is the Sky Opening Sect's disciple Xin Ming. I've seen Senior before. This is my token of identification, a white water sword." He then took out a sparkling white sword and handed it over to him. After the old man examined the sword, his face relaxed and he handed it back to the young man. "Oh, the Sky Opening Sect. I've indeed met esteemed sect master Taoist Liu before. This magic tool is held by all Sky Opening Sect disciples. You may go." The young man then smiled and respectfully bid his farewells before flying out of the harbor. Not a single cultivator from the Starfall Coalition blocked his way. Seeing that the young man had managed to leave the island without any difficulties, others began to fly towards the old man and reveal themselves. The old man seemed rich with experience. Regardless of what token or cultivation art they revealed, the old man was able to identify it at a glance, much to the surprise of Han Li. When Han Li saw a core formation such as himself be allowed to leave, he began to feel impatient. He then revealed himself and flew towards the sky as a streak of azure light. Who might fellow Taoist be? When the old man saw that Han Li was a core formation cultivator, his tone became slightly more tactful. "I'm the guest elder of the Exquisite Sound Sect. This is my sect token. Please have a look." On the day that Fairy Violet Spirit had deemed him an elder, she had given him a badge. Han Li took it out and handed it over to the old man without hesitation. The old man carefully examined the token and stared at Han Li as he said, "Exquisite Sound Sect. The guest elders of your sect should be named Han Li and Crooked Soul, both of whom are often in secluded cultivation and rarely seen. Which one of them are you?" Han Li's heart trembled, but he wore a calm smile instead. "My name is Han Li. I didn't expect that fellow Taoist would know the name of a fameless vagrant cultivator such as myself. Impressive." The old man chuckled and spoke with an unexpectedly polite tone. He, it was nothing. Your esteemed sect is famous throughout the scattered star seas, especially your sect's Fairy Violet Spirit. Our clan's young master has long wished to see her exceptional beauty. I hope fellow Taoists can pass those words along." Shock momentarily appeared on his face before he hesitantly asked, "Young master, who might you be speaking of?" "My sect's young master is the sole descendant of the great ancestor. Although few know of his name right now, it will later reverberate throughout the scattered star seas." Han Li was inwardly flabbergasted, but he agreed, "All right. If I come across the sect leader, I will be sure to pass those words on." The old man appeared quite satisfied with Han Li's response. After fumbling with the token for a moment more, he gave the token back to Han Li and said, "Good. As there is nothing wrong with your token, you may go." After Han Li saluted him, he unhurriedly flew off. The old man revealed a strange expression as he watched Han Li fly off towards the horizon. Chapter 503, Another Clash. The burly man amongst the core formation cultivators saw the old man's face and asked with surprise, "What is it? Was there something amiss? Was his identity false? The old man twirled his beard with his finger before revealing a green jade slip in his palm. There's nothing wrong with his identity. We've long acquired the portraits of the two elders from our agents in the exquisite sound sect. His appearance is an exact match for what we were given. There is no doubt that he is Elder Han. Even if he was a pretender using some sort of secret disguise technique, he won't be able to escape Elder Wang's discerning eye when he leaves the harbor. The burly man snorted with dissatisfaction. Since there is no problem, why did you wear that expression? After muttering to himself for a second, the old man said, the exquisite sound sect's Elder Han is no simple character. I fear that even if we were to both take him on, we would not be victorious. The burly man was stunned before shaking his head as if he were beating a drum with it. He doubtfully said, what does that mean? Isn't he an early core formation cultivator just like us? Moreover, he is a vagrant cultivator. How could he compare to the two of us who have received the frequent teachings of our divine ancestor? The old man wasn't annoyed by his words in the slightest, and calmly gave him an explanation. Enforcer Liu should know that although our seven fiends arts can't be considered a top-grade cultivation technique, we are extremely sensitive to the amount of baleful chi one possesses. The baleful chi that he possesses is the heaviest I've ever seen from a core formation cultivator. No small number of cultivators has died by his hand. The burly man objected, that's nothing, so what if he killed a few low-grade cultivators? I could do that too. It's not the same. Although you can accumulate a bit of weak baleful chi from that, it would last for but a short moment and would easily disappear. As for this person, not only is his baleful chi exceedingly dense, but it is also extremely cold. This is something that can only be developed by killing a great number of cultivators of similar rank or higher. Unless he uses a few specific secret techniques to rid himself of the baleful chi, it will forever haunt his body. After a cold glint flickered from his eyes, he imposingly continued. Furthermore, he seems to have comprehended a few miraculous sword chi techniques, causing the span of his baleful chi to be exceptionally large. It is truly astonishing. If an ordinary cultivator were to fight him, not only would their bewitchment and illusionary techniques be weakened, but if his baleful chi were to be fully cultivated, his opponents could temporarily lose their will to fight if they do not protect against it. If he were to cultivate our seven fiend arts, he would make rapid advancements. Of course, the old man didn't know that Han Li had sparsely killed core formation cultivators, but instead killed several hundreds of their equivalent, grade 5 demon beasts. The reason for his heavy baleful chi was completely different from what he had imagined. The burly man blankly stared for a moment before puzzlingly asking, Enforcer Kang, could it be that you wish to take him as a disciple? Regardless of his baleful chi, he won't become your disciple. Don't forget that he is a core formation cultivator as well. The old man calmly said, take him in as a disciple. Of course not. I was merely interested in the method he used to accumulate such strong baleful chi. He must have a secret. Having heard that, the burly man lost interest. He reckoned that in the entire scattered star seas, any cultivation arts that draw on support from the baleful chi to progress all belong to renegade sects. As his own cultivation art was not one of them, he felt disinterested. But the burly man soon thought of something and asked with a puzzled expression, you said that the young master was interested in the exquisite sound sect's fairy violet spirit. Why haven't I heard of this before? Could he have told you in private? The young master need not tell me anything. You should know the cultivation art that the young master cultivates. With the widespread fame of fairy violet spirit's beauty, if we are able to present the woman to our young master, there will be many rewards. The young master has just reached late core formation stage. With the sacred ancestors' pointers and protection, I reckon that he will become a nascent soul cultivator in less than 100 years. The burly man was rendered speechless for a moment before he excitedly nodded his head. The burly man then rubbed his hands with a sinister smile and said, then, when should we act? It appears that the young master is about to leave seclusion. The old man calmly said, there is no need to rush. It would be best to do this after the next great battle. After all, it would be better to act after we have displayed the might of our Starfolk coalition. If they are unwilling to yield when the time comes, we'll be able to seize her under the pretext of that she possesses secret ties to the Star Palace. As she established her sect in Heavenly Star City, she will have to obediently comply. The burly man rejoiced and laughed. Good. Since they only have 2 early core formation elders, they won't dare to stop our scheme. Fellow Taoist Kang is truly clever. The old man smiled upon hearing him. At the same time, he contentedly thought, like this, I will be able to pressure the exquisite sound sect's elder Han into obediently handing over his secret for accumulating baleful chi. Two birds with one stone. With that thought, the old man narrowed his eyes and wore a strange expression. Han Li had now reached the end of the harbor. After taking a few glances at the bustling Starfall Coalition cultivators on the island, he decided to speed up. But at that moment, a formidable spiritual sense suddenly enveloped him without restraint. Han Li was startled, but he soon stopped and remained floating in the sky. This was something that he had earlier anticipated. How could the Starfall Coalition allow core formation cultivators to be released on something as simple as a token? Han Li reckoned that the owner of the spiritual sense was their leader, a nascent soul eccentric, using his spiritual sense to examine him. It seemed this was a measure to prevent core formation cultivators from using secret techniques to alter their appearance and escape the island with a false identity. Han Li's expression was completely calm and didn't reveal the slightest panic. He hadn't even bothered to consider using a false identity from the very beginning. This was because these techniques could be seen through by those with formidable spiritual sense, unless one used a legendary technique from antiquity or an extremely precious magic treasure. Had he superficially changed his appearance and used a false identity, he would appear quite suspicious were he to be caught, causing a huge backlash. Instead, he would rather take advantage of his status as an elder of the exquisite sound sect and take the risk of leaving a trail behind for Zenith Yin and the others. By the time the eccentrics tracked him down, he would already be in the outer star seas and be completely untouchable. With that in mind, Han Li calmly allowed the nascent soul cultivator to examine him with his spiritual sense. As expected, the spiritual sense soon disappeared without leaving a mark on his body. Han Li let out a long sigh and calmly flew towards the sea. Not long after Han Li left the island, he began to fly at his top speed. As the blood-red cloak would attract too much attention near the conflict, he could only fly through normal means. Half a day later, Han Li was wondering how he should enter the city while he flew when he came to a sudden stop. He frowned and examined his surroundings with a puzzled gaze. His expression suddenly stiffened as he gazed into the distance. He enveloped his body in a layer of faint azure light and motionlessly floated in place. After a short moment, a blue and a red streak of light flew towards him with the speed of lightning. The lights arrived in front of Han Li in an instant, fading away to reveal two middle-aged cultivators wearing silver robes with gold lining. Starfall Coalition cultivators. Both of the men were early core formation cultivators. One of them appeared scholarly, possessing a pale face and no beard. The other was a rather robust man with tan skin. Since they had both appeared, they just coldly stared at Han Li without a word. Their spiritual senses were obviously locked onto Han Li as if they were about to take action. Han Li's expression stirred for a moment. He then asked them with a deep voice, "What business do you two have? I am in a hurry. If you have nothing to say, then I will take my leave." "Wrong, you will be coming with us," the robust man icily spoke with a commanding tone. Han Li scowled and his eyes coldly glinted. "Have I offended you too? Or has the Starfall Coalition taken to tyrannically arresting people as they please? Fellow Taoist, please do not be angry. We are under orders to pursue and eliminate any Star Palace remnants. We managed to wound a Star Palace cultivator just recently, but he managed to escape in this direction using a strange technique. It just so happened we found you while in pursuit of him. According to our knowledge, the Star Palace cultivators possesses face-changing techniques. As we are unable to tell if your appearance is genuine, we must ask you to accompany us until we find the cultivator that escaped." The scholarly middle-aged man spoke quite politely, but he obviously had no intention of letting Han Li go. Chapter 504, The Might of Ancient Treasures. Han Li grew silent in response to the scholarly man's words, and his expression continuously shifted as he considered his options. The two righteous Tao cultivators tacitly glanced at each other before vigilantly watching Han Li. Han Li smiled and serenely said, "All right, since I have no immediate affairs, I will accompany you too." The two men's expressions immediately relaxed. A trace of satisfaction appeared on the scholarly man's face as he opened his mouth to say something. At that moment Han Li struck. His right hand suddenly emerged from his sleeve, silently shooting 6 streaks of azure light towards the large man. At the same time, he waved his left hand, summoning a chain of 5-colored copper bands in his palm. It started to release a muffled hum. "You dare to attack?" the scholarly man quickly reacted. Upon seeing Han Li attack, he immediately spat out a square magic treasure several inches wide. It was flat and pitch black, appearing to be an inkstone of sorts. The robust man quickly moved as well and released a white jade stamp that glowed with white light. The magic treasure immediately increased several times in size as it met the 6 streaks of azure light. At that moment, the scholarly man saw the copper bands in Han Li's hand and shouted out a warning, "Be careful of the copper bands." The large man was unable to utter a response. The 6 streaks of azure light had released a clear ring before splitting into 12 identical sword lights. 6 of the 12 lights then suddenly merged into a huge sword and fiercely cut down upon the white jade stamp. The other 6 streaks of sword light then changed direction and swiftly arced off to the side. The large man was greatly alarmed. Without the time to think, he hastily formed an incantation gesture. Bursts of blue light with vivid talisman characters contained within them flourished around him. The flourishes of blue light wildly expanded and formed a barrier of blue light around the large man. The large man intended to directly receive the attack of Han Li's bamboo cloudswarm swords. Of course, the scholarly man didn't stay still as all of this happened. After he had initially shouted, he hastily pointed to the inkstone floating in front of him. It quickly swiveled and released a black fog. In a second, the fog had already reached the span of 10 meters, flooding the nearby surroundings with the smell of ink. Then, without hesitation, the scholarly man cast an incantation seal, causing the black fog to rapidly condense into a flock of 30 pitch-black birds that were each about half a foot long. Then, with a monstrous cry, they shot towards Han Li with a flicker of red light. Han Li turned a blind eye to the attack and had his copper band sway several times before disappearing with a shimmer. He then summoned his ancient flower basket with a flip of his hand. Seeing that Han Li was completely unconcerned with his attack, the scholarly man rejoiced rather than becoming angry. His bewildering inkstone was created from ancient refinement methods. It was only through sheer luck and tremendous effort that he had been able to successfully create it. He had nearly used up half of his life to save up for it, but he had no regrets. Ever since he acquired the bewildering inkstone, he had rarely met a cultivator of the same grade that could pose a threat to him. Even mid-core formation cultivators found it troublesome. So long as the target's cultivation wasn't vastly superior to his own, they would be immediately trapped in an inescapable illusion after becoming enveloped by the ink fog. The scholarly man couldn't help but sneer as the birds shot towards Han Li. He clutched his hands in an incantation seal, intending to order his birds to rupture. But at that same moment, he suddenly heard a low hum next to his ear. His limbs and neck were suddenly clasped in copper bands. When they tightened, both his movements and his magic power were completely restrained. At that moment, the scholarly man felt full of terror. He had been on alert for the copper bands that had disappeared, but there wasn't the slightest warning before they had clasped themselves onto his body. This situation was far beyond his wildest expectation. In that moment, the scholarly man was flusteredly thinking of any method to escape. On the other side of the battle, azure light and white chi interweaved amongst each other as the huge azure sword and the large stamp block collided with a boom. The brilliant white chi was able to easily overwhelm the azure light, causing the huge sword to only last for mere moments before collapsing. At that same instant, the other 6 streaks of azure light had already arrived at the strange barrier of talisman characters. Muffled bangs sounded out as the 6 streaks of azure light collided against the blue barrier. Although the blue barrier flickered upon impact, it was still able to endure. Han Li felt slightly surprised by this. It seemed that without the divine Devilbane lightning, his bamboo cloudswarm swords were somewhat lacking in strength due to how little time he had spent tempering them. But before he could think any further, the black birds arrived before him. Although they didn't have the support of the scholarly man's magic power, the inkstone magic treasure was still linked to his spiritual sense. Their attack hadn't relented in the slightest. Han Li coldly snorted, and the flower basket bloomed with light. The light wildly expanded and enveloped all of the birds without exception. The scholarly man paled and shouted with disbelief, "Impossible! How can you have so many ancient treasures?" It would already be extremely lucky for an ordinary cultivator to possess one ancient treasure. After all, most ancient treasures fell into the hands of nascent soul cultivators whenever they emerged, rendering it extremely difficult for a core formation cultivator to even lay their hands on one. However, Han Li didn't have the slightest interest in replying. He tossed away the flower basket. The flower basket then collided against the large stamp block and enveloped it with its light. Although the stamp wildly struggled to escape, it was to little success. Afterwards, Han Li then flicked his fingers, ruthlessly shooting 10 streaks of azure sword chi towards the restrained scholarly man. No, the scholarly man could only shout in terror before his body swayed from the impact of the sword chi. With his body torn to shreds, his life quickly faded away. As the 5 element bands had sealed his true essence in cultivation, his doom was all but assured. Then with a gesture, the 5 element bands disappeared with a shimmer before reappearing into Han Li's hand. Han Li's gaze coldly turned to the side. Head laced with sweat, the large man clutched an incantation gesture in an attempt to retrieve his stamp as the 6 azure swords continued to hammer down on his blue talisman barrier. Of course, his effort was in vain. The large man's mind was shaken after having seen how easily his companion was dealt with. When he saw Han Li's attention shift onto him, he felt his body break out in a chill. He gritted his teeth and suddenly flew off as a streak of blue light, abandoning his own soul-linked magic treasure in a decisive move. Han Li narrowed his eyes, and his copper bands disappeared from view once more. A moment later, they appeared above the fleeing man's head. The large man couldn't believe his eyes as the 5 copper bands locked onto his body, passing through his blue barrier as if there was nothing there. At that same moment, the blue light surrounding him suddenly disappeared as he fell from the sky with a tumble. A cold glint flashed from Han Li's eyes. A streak of azure light fell from the sky and wound around the large man several times, cutting him into pieces. Both of the 2 Starfall Coalition cultivators had already been slain by Han Li's hand. At that moment, Han Li effortlessly took their storage pouches and looked through them with his spiritual sense for a moment before calmly putting them away. As for the masterless block stamp and inkstone magic treasures, Han Li helped himself to them as well. With his hands behind his back, Han Li then lowered his head towards the ocean and said, "Fellow Taoist has been stealthily watching for quite some time. How about you come out for a fresh breath of air?" Although his voice wasn't very loud, it could be clearly heard from a kilometer away. A sea breeze blew past Han Li before the area returned to silence once more. Han Li sighed upon seeing this. With a sullen expression, he said with an irritated tone, "Must I drag your esteemed self out from the sea myself?" With Han Li having discovered his hiding spot, the concealed individual couldn't help but flusteredly say, "Fellow Taoist, please wait. I am coming out right now." Chapter 505, Ling Yuling. Han Li felt somewhat astonished upon hearing the person's voice. The sea beneath him rippled and flashed with white light, before revealing a cultivator slowly flying out from the sea. The new arrival wore the white attire of the Star Palace, possessed long black hair, and had an emerald green headband embedded with jade. Upon being able to clearly see the person's appearance, Han Li revealed slight amazement. The person had flawless white skin, thick dark eyebrows, delicate red lips, pointed eyes, and a thin nose. The Star Palace cultivator was undoubtedly beautiful, but what shocked Han Li was that he couldn't tell whether the person was a man or a woman. If this person was a woman, one might say that her mouth formed a natural smile, and that her every movement carried a trace of confidence and ease. If one were to say the person was a man, then one might say that his beautiful appearance held an unconcealable charm, one that proved fatally attractive towards other men. "Although I do not know your esteemed name, I am grateful for your rescue. I am the Star Palace's external affairs enforcer, Ling Yuling." While the person's voice was pleasant, it was neutral in pitch. This caused Han Li to frown and feel apprehension. This person reminded him of the harmonious bond sex young Master Tian from the heavenly South region's Devil Dao. But after some more thought, he felt that they were completely different. While young Master Tian may have been extremely gorgeous, his mannerisms and voice were clearly that of a man. TL note: since there are no gender-neutral singular pronouns in English, Ling Yuling will be addressed as he, despite having an indeterminate gender. As for this Ling Yuling fellow, although his actions were that of a man, he held an indescribably effeminate aura. Moreover, with the deep magnetism in his voice, it was even more difficult to differentiate him as a man or woman. "I am Han Li. My previous actions took but a slight effort. Had they not forced my hand, I wouldn't have attacked them." Although he still felt shocked, he didn't reveal any hint of it on his face. "Regardless, I am still very grateful towards you." Ling Yuling smiled sweetly, casually producing a flirtatious charm. Han Li felt his heart coldly tremble. As he still didn't know whether or not he was a man or a woman, he could only turn a blind eye toward Ling Yuling's beauty. Ling Yuling retrieved his smile with eyes flickering in thought. He then solemnly said, Is the reason why fellow Taoist is in a hurry because he wishes to go to Heavenly Star City. The city should have already been locked down, and it would be quite difficult to enter. If fellow Taoist is willing, I would be happy to take you into the city as compensation for your rescue. When Ling Yuling said this, Han Li felt somewhat surprised. But after some thought, he realized that he had already displayed his lack of association with the Starfall Coalition when he killed 2 of their cultivators. As such, Ling Yuling took the initiative to make him an offer he couldn't refuse. Han Li slowly replied with a bright expression, "My cave residence was set up in Heavenly Star City, and I was in a hurry to return because of it. I must thank fellow Taoist Ling for the trouble. Else, I may have been unable to enter the city." Ling Yuling beamingly smiled in response with bright, seductive eyes. "You're too kind. Since fellow Taoist was able to slay those 2 without hesitation, you naturally won't need any identification to enter the city. Our Star Palace welcomes you. However, those 2 weren't the only cultivators in pursuit of me, nor were they the strongest. We had best hurry on our way." Han Li remained silent and nodded in response. The 2 then flew off towards Heaven Star City as streaks of light. Along the way, Han Li curiously examined the other cultivator. As Ling Yuling's white clothes were slightly loose, Han Li wasn't able to make out any female or male characteristics from the outside. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that Ling Yuling didn't have a protrusion from his throat one, commonly known as an Adam's apple. However, this wasn't enough to definitely prove that he was a woman. To the best of his knowledge, there were a few peculiar cultivation arts that reversed one's yin and yang, altering portions of one's gender characteristics. This person wouldn't be cultivating such a technique, right? Han Li strangely thought. Having noticed Han Li's gaze, the beautiful person charmingly smiled towards Han Li, causing him to turn his head away in embarrassment. Fellow Taoist possesses 2 ancient treasures and seems to be favored by the heavens. Although I've had the fortune to see many magic treasures, I've never seen one with abilities such as your copper bands. I wonder what are their origins. As Ling Yuling flew in a streak of light, he casually mentioned Han Li's ancient treasures for some reason. Han Li replied vaguely, "It's nothing. I have merely had more opportunities than ordinary cultivators." There was no way he would so easily divulge the truth. But fellow Taoist did kill 2 similar grade cultivators by himself and can't possibly be a common character. Would you be interested in joining our Star Palace? I can give you a recommendation. Seeing that Han Li didn't want to answer, he didn't push the issue and casually changed the subject to recruiting him instead. When Han Li heard this, he couldn't help but frown. This Ling Yuling was quite difficult to handle. They had yet to arrive at the city and he'd already started to raise some serious questions. Any cultivators that joined the Star Palace now would become cannon fodder, but if he refused, would he still be granted access into the city? His own words would ensnare him. After a moment of thought, Han Li sighed and spoke with deliberation. "Although I've looked up to the Star Palace for quite some time, the exquisite sound sect has treated me exceptionally well. I'm afraid I cannot leave my post as the exquisite sound sect's guest elder in the coming years. I am truly sorry." Han Li shamelessly used the exquisite sound sect as an excuse to refuse. "It is no matter. I feel much admiration towards fellow Taoist Han's exceptional loyalty. However, our Star Palace will always be willing to welcome individuals such as yourself into our ranks." Ling Yuling didn't reveal any dissatisfaction at Han Li's tactful refusal. Instead, he faintly smiled and started to chat with Han Li about a few hidden rumors and interesting stories of the scattered star seas. He tactfully avoided re-mentioning any matters pertaining to the Star Palace and Starfall Coalition. Han Li was quite happy at Lin Yuling's quick change in attitude, allowing him some time to relax. As they idly chatted on their way, they eventually spotted Heavenly Star City and rejoiced. But before they managed to get close to the island, a squad of 5 cultivators appeared before them from seemingly out of nowhere. Their leader was a sallow-faced, middle-aged early core formation cultivator. The other 4 cultivators were all at Foundation establishment. "We pay respects to Enforcer Ling." Upon recognizing Ling Yuling, the 4 Foundation establishment cultivators flew forwards and respectfully saluted him. It seemed this androgynous person held quite the reputation in the Star Palace. The sallow-faced cultivator revealed pleasant surprise and asked, "Junior Marshal Brother Ling, are you all right?" Senior Marshal Brother was quite worried upon hearing that Southclear Island had been ambushed. Who might this fellow Taoist be? The sallow-faced cultivator then turned his sights on Han Li and suspiciously examined him. Ling Yuling spoke with a serene expression. "I was pursued by 2 Starfall Coalition cultivators along the way, but thankfully, fellow Taoist Han came to my rescue. As fellow Taoist Han's cave residence was established in Heavenly Star City, I've brought him back here. There should be no problem in allowing fellow Taoist Han into the city, yes. Not knowing whether it was due to fatigue from the rush to the city or some internal injuries, Han Li saw that Ling Yuling's face had grown somewhat pale, causing him to appear somewhat fragile. Since he is someone who saved the life of Junior Marshal Brother Ling, this will be no problem at all. Junior Marshal Brother Ling, are you injured? When Han Li saw the sallow-faced cultivator's extremely concerned expression, his heart stirred. It is nothing. Although they struck me with a magic treasure, I had the protection of my heavenly fragrance chain and didn't suffer much damage. Ling Yuling's beautiful face faintly blushed, but his expression still remained calm. After a moment of hesitation, the sallow-faced man took a small bottle from his body and politely passed it over to him. I have a heaven spirit pill that was refined from a secret formula. Junior Marshal Brother Ling, please take it and prevent any lasting damage to your vital energies. Ling Yuling saw this. His expression sank as if he were about to become angry. But he soon thought of something and instead smiled with passionate eyes, saying, "Then Junior Marital Brother must thank Senior Marshal Brother for the medicine. I must first head into the palace and report on Southclear Island. I'm afraid I must ask Senior Marital Brother to help fellow Taoist Han into the city. As he is my savior, Senior Marshal Brother must treat him properly." Ling Yuling then smiled, taking the bottle with his slim, flawless hand in a very graceful manner. In that moment, it appeared he was undoubtedly a woman. The sallow-faced cultivator revealed excitement as if he were honored to hear Ling Yuling's pleasant words. "It is not a problem. Since Elder Wang is on duty, he won't make things difficult for Junior Marshal Brother." He then slapped his chest and pledged, "Please don't hesitate to leave fellow Taoist Han with me." When Han Li saw this, a strange expression flickered from his eyes. Was this person a woman or not? Why else would the sallow-faced man appear so infatuated with Ling Yuling? Han Li's heart was in great turbulence. Chapter 506, Requirements for Access. For a long while, the sallow-faced cultivator gazed in the direction that Ling Yuling had flown off in. He eventually turned his gaze back to Han Li and calmly said, "Although fellow Taoist did assist Junior Marshal Brother Ling, there are still a few questions I must ask you. As these are trying times, I hope fellow Taoist will cooperate." Han Li calmly replied, "If fellow Taoist has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask." The sallow-faced cultivator nodded his head and said, "Good. First, tell me your identity. I will be verifying whether or not it is true." Han Li smiled upon hearing this. "I am an elder of the Exquisite Sound Sect. This is my badge, and this is the restriction control medallion to my cave residence in the city. I'm sure that fellow Taoist will know whether it is genuine or fake." Exquisite Sound Sect. Take a look and see if the Exquisite Sound Sect has an elder named Han. The sallow-faced cultivator bluntly took both of the medallions and gave an order to those behind him without turning his head. "Yes." When the dainty female cultivator heard him, she hastily rummaged through her storage pouch before taking out a jade slip and immersing her spiritual sense within it. Afterwards, she glanced at Han Li several times before speaking with a respectful tone. "Enforcer Zhao, the Exquisite Sound Sect does have an elder named Han Li, and his appearance is exactly the same as is recorded." When the sallow-faced cultivator heard this, he expressionlessly nodded his head. "Oh, these two medallions are genuine as well. There seems to be no problem with your identity." The sallow-faced cultivator tossed the medallions back to Han Li. "All right, you four continue on your patrol. I will be bringing this fellow Taoist into the city." The four behind him shouted in acknowledgement, "Yes." Afterwards, the sallow-faced cultivator wordlessly beckoned to Han Li and flew off toward Heavenly Star City. Han Li closely flew after him as a streak of azure light. Not long after, the sallow-faced cultivator brought Han Li to the high walls of the city before flying up towards the city gate. Although there was no further interrogation, Han Li released his spiritual sense to examine his surroundings, discovering at least 6 hidden cultivators along the way. Although they were mostly Foundation establishment cultivators, there were 2 core formation cultivators that remained unseen. Although his face remained calm, his heart trembled. It seemed the attack on Southclear Island had prompted Heavenly Star City to introduce greatly increased security as he had expected. Had he not been given a referral, he feared it wouldn't have been an easy task to enter the city. The city gates appeared quite desolate. Apart from the tens of white-clothed cultivators standing guard outside of it, there was no one else present. In addition, as Han Li came closer to the city, he discovered that the walls and the gate were glowing with faint white light as if they were under the effects of a restriction. After the sallow-faced cultivator landed on the gate, he headed straight towards an old man that was reclining in a bamboo chair. He had a short beard and whiskers all over his face. He saluted the old man and spoke with a respectful tone. "Enforcer Yu, this is the exquisite sound sect's elder Han. I've already inspected his identity and command medallion, and I've found no problems. I must trouble Enforcer Yu to explain the procedure for entering the city. I cannot stay much longer as I must continue on my patrol." Han Li's gaze fell onto the old man, and he immediately put his guard up. It was no wonder that the sallow-faced cultivator was so polite to him. He was a mid-core formation cultivator. The old man slowly opened his eyes as if he were still half asleep. Exquisite sound sect. After a moment of hesitation, he somewhat reluctantly added on, "That's right," and he righteously assisted junior martial brother Ling as well. A cold glint flickered in the old man's eyes, faintly revealing a spirited energy before it immediately disappeared. Then with a powerless voice he lazily said, "Oh, that is strange. All right, I understand. Fellow Taoist Zhao may return." The sallow-faced cultivator seemed to not mind the old man's mannerisms and saluted him before flying off, paying Han Li not the slightest heed. Han Li calmly stood in place and silently looked at the old man. Seen the exquisite sound sect's young girl Violet Spirit many times before. She truly is a fine beauty. I've heard of you, exquisite sound sect elder, but unfortunately I've never had the chance to meet you before. It seems from your youthful appearance that you also cultivate a technique that halts the aging of your appearance, much like our fellow Taoist Ling. To the best of my knowledge, these cultivation techniques are all extreme yin in nature. There are little benefits if a man were to cultivate it. With serene calm, Han Li asked, "Do your words mean that fellow Taoist Ling is a man? As for my appearance, that is the result of a face-setting pill that I took long ago, not a cultivation technique." The old man let out a muffled chuckle before speaking with an impressive lack of speed. "Even our Star Palace is unsure of whether fellow Taoist Ling is a male or female, let alone me. However, it is undoubtable that he cultivates a technique that halts his appearance. Haha, it seems fellow Taoist Han's luck is quite good to come across an opportunity to consume a rare medicine pill." Han Li felt astonished. The old man continued, "All right, I won't dwell on the matter. Since your identity has already been examined, this old man won't bother to do so. However, as the times are unordinary, the rules will be as well. Fellow Taoist, listen well to what I have to say." Han Li raised his eyebrows and remained silent. The old man's expression grew sullen and he said with an icy tone, "Right now, fellow Taoist has two options. You can join the Star Palace for the time being if you are willing to assist us in our fight. In this case, your movements will be unrestrained within the city, and each time you carry out any missions, you will be heavily rewarded. There is no way we would allow anyone's efforts to be in vain. If you are unwilling to fight in the war and wish to stay idly in the city, we won't force you to fight, but as the city is currently under martial law, no one is allowed to casually leave their residence unless it is during a specified time. Our enforcement squads in the city will slay anyone who does not follow these rules. Fellow Taoist Han can now tell me his choice." A strange expression flickered from Han Li's eyes. For a time, he silently sunk into contemplation. When the old man saw this, he didn't rush Han Li. He only narrowed his eyes, revealing a slightly crossed expression. After muttering to himself for a moment, Han Li solemnly asked, "After I enter the city, would I be able to use the Outer Star Seas transportation formation?" Originally, it would have been fine so long as you paid the Spirit Stone toll. However, it will no longer do. If you wish to go to the Outer Star Seas, you will have to do something for us." The old man didn't appear surprised, as if he had already anticipated Han Li's question. Although Han Li already guessed what it would be, he still frowned and asked, "What would that be?" The old man faintly smiled and lightly said, "It's quite simple. As soon as the battle starts, you will get an assignment from the Star Palace to eliminate a Starfall Coalition cultivator at the same rank of cultivation as yourself." His smile seemed to resemble a smirk. Having heard this, Han Li bitterly laughed in his mind. It seems the upper echelons of the Star Palace intended to coerce cultivators that wish to leave the city. Even if the Star Palace couldn't control them, they would be required to spill the blood of Starfall Coalition cultivators. On the one hand, it would weaken the might of the Starfall Coalition. On the other, it would prevent those cultivators from ever joining the enemy. Using a single breath, Han Li quickly said, "I've already killed similar ranked cultivators on my way back with fellow Taoist Ling. Does that count?" You've already killed one. The old man appeared quite moved. That's right, Han Li nodded his head without hesitation. Unfortunately, that won't count. It must happen after the battle has started. There is no point if you kill any of them beforehand. Han Li stroked his chin and pensively asked, when does fellow Taoist reckon that the battle will break out? The old man was slightly surprised by Han Li's question and took another look at Han Li before calmly replying. It should be as soon as the next few days, I imagine. The Starfall Coalition don't plan on attacking the inner island, but rather aim to take over Heavenly Star City in an ambush in the quickest time possible. Without further deliberation, Han Li calmly said, I will enlist. I'll be wanting to use the Outer Star Seas transportation formation after I kill a cultivator of the same rank. The old man patted down his body before fishing out a sparkling yellow ring. He then indifferently handed it over to Han Li and said, Good, put this ring on. It represents that for the time being, you will be a member of the Star Palace. When the battle comes, the ring will give you an assignment. Chapter 507, Light in the Darkest Hour. Han Li received the ring and put it on without hesitation. The old man smiled and said, Good, you can now enter the city. During the day there will be free movement, but there is an enforced curfew at night. When the battle starts, the ring will notify you. You can wait in your cave residence until then. After he finished speaking, he slowly closed his eyes once more and appeared to drift off. After taking a deep glance at the old man, Han Li entered the city. Not only were the streets of the city desolate, but he only occasionally caught glimpses of other cultivators in flight. The empty city made for dreary scenery. Han Li's expression remained calm, but he inwardly rejoiced. From the apparent circumstances, the city market must certainly have been shut down. Had he not taken the time to make his preparations in Southclear Island, he would have surely suffered quite the headache. Han Li softly chuckled before flying through the air towards his cave residence on Sage Mountain. As he passed by the market city, Han Li glanced down to find that all the shops were closed as he had expected. There wasn't a single person in sight. Han Li lightly shook his head and quickly flew towards the 39th layer of Sage Mountain. Upon entering Sage Mountain, Han Li keenly felt that the security on the mountain was far denser than the outer city. He was able to notice over 10 different ripples through the air with his spiritual sense alone. But with the yellow ring on hand, the ripples in the air made way for Han Li. Despite all of this, there were no guards who appeared to question Han Li. But what made Han Li frown was the late core formation cultivator that swept his spiritual sense past him. Han Li feigned ignorance of this as he flew towards his cave residence. When he arrived, he examined the restrictions to find that nothing had been changed. However, Han Li blankly stood outside the restrictions for a moment before letting out a sigh. He hadn't been gone for long, but he had encountered many close brushes with death, and now he had no choice but to discard his cave residence of nearly 100 years. This caused Han Li to feel somewhat sentimental. He used his restriction control medallion to open the restrictions and slowly walked in, finding that everything was the same as he had left it. Han Li first attended to the most important matter at hand, the gold-devouring beetles. After making certain that the gold-devouring beetles were sound, Han Li felt genuinely relieved. He immediately placed all of them in a spirit beast pouch that he had prepared earlier and turned towards his medicine garden and placed everything into his storage pouch. After this, Han Li decided to relax for the time being and slowly walked to the bedroom. He laid down on the bed and started to ponder about his plans for the future. He was required to kill a Starfall Coalition cultivator of the same rank as him if he wanted to use the transportation formation to the Outer Star Seas. While this condition wasn't difficult for him to fulfill, Han Li was worried that before the battle started, the Star Palace would somehow learn that the Heaven Void Cauldron had fallen into his hands. After all, he had no way of knowing when those nascent soul eccentrics would leave Heaven Void Hall. If one of those old eccentrics were to divulge this information, it would be disastrous for him. In addition to this, he had other misgivings. It was possible that after he fulfilled their condition, the upper echelon of the Star Palace would make up a frivolous reason to shamelessly deny him access to the transportation formation. After all, what could the recruited cultivators possibly do, even if the Star Palace reneged on their agreement? Although he had calmly agreed to the Star Palace's agreement at the entrance, he never intended on sincerely awaiting the Star Palace's orders. He prepared to explore the surroundings of the transportation formation and see whether or not he could stealthily use it. If the security was lacking, he would seize the first opportunity to use it. As for whether or not he offended the colossal Star Palace, he didn't care in the least. In the end, he would still be pursued by those nascent soul eccentrics. With those reassuring thoughts in mind, Han Li dozed off to sleep. The numerous surprises on the past excursions had left Han Li quite fatigued. On the next day, Han Li awoke with roused spirits. He slowly walked out from the cave residence underneath a clear and bright sky, before flying into the air and examining his surroundings. Although there weren't as many cultivators outside compared to during peacetime, it was completely different from yesterday. It seemed that this was the time where free movement was allowed. Han Li first flew around his surroundings in a circle. After seeing that no one was monitoring him or paying any attention, he shot towards the 50th floor of Sage Mountain without any hesitation. Security was tighter as he went deeper into the mountain. Soon, Han Li arrived above the Starry Sky Palace, where the transportation formation was located. However, he merely passed over it. Instead, he pretended to visit another hall instead, and used that short instance to quietly sweep his spiritual sense over the hall. It went quite smoothly. The hall was nearly entirely devoid of any obstructions, but when he swept his spiritual sense past the inner portion of the building, he was blocked by a blue-yellow restriction. Fortunately, Han Li noticed it quite quickly and was able to retrieve his spiritual sense before touching the restriction. His expression then sank. Although he reckoned he was able to force his spiritual sense past the restriction, it would alert any of the cultivators inside the hall. There was no way he would willingly do something so foolish. At that moment, he unconsciously frowned. Because of the restriction, Han Li was neither able to see the quantity of cultivators within the inner halls nor their level of cultivation. However, there was no reason for any nascent soul cultivators to appear there. In the most extreme case, there would only be late core formation cultivators present. After all, the Starry Sky Palace didn't hold any critical value towards the Star Palace's upper echelon. After flying a far enough distance, Han Li flew in a circle and returned along a slightly different path. When Han Li was on his way back, he indignantly released his spiritual sense to see whether or not there was a gap in the restrictions. While his exploration found no faults in the restrictions, he did hear a raspy voice. "Fellow Taoist Zhang, how were the terms? 3,000 spirit stones per person on the transportation formation. This is the greatest amount we could offer." When Han Li heard this, his heart began to stir. His sights quickly fell onto two cultivators beneath him, and he immediately slowed down. One of the cultivators was a dark-skinned, middle-aged man, while the other was a shriveled man with a sickly appearance. Both of them were mid-foundation establishment cultivators. The one who had nervously spoken was the dark-skinned man. The two were being careful, whispering at a place where no one else was present. But that didn't matter when Han Li's enormous spiritual sense enveloped them. He could hear everything they said with perfect clarity. "SHH, be careful. Let's talk about this through voice transmission." The shriveled man nervously glanced around, but Han Li managed to perceptively hide himself in an instant, entering a state of chi restraint. At that same moment, Han Li's spiritual sense was immediately withdrawn from other areas and was completely focused on the two in preparation of eavesdropping on their voice transmissions. As Han Li's spiritual sense far surpassed theirs, he was able to do this with the utmost secrecy. Were other core formation cultivators to attempt this, they would require an appropriate top-grade secret technique to accomplish the same result. Although we may be distant relatives, it is extremely dangerous to secretly release people into the outer star seas. He said that anything less than 5,000 spirit stones per person, and he will have to decline. And this is considering that the Star Palace doesn't care about us Foundation establishment cultivators. Were a core formation cultivator to hand over even more spirit stones, he definitely wouldn't be allowed through. With an unsightly expression, the dark-skinned man roared, 5,000. Are we filled with money? How are rogue Foundation establishment cultivators supposed to come up with that many spirit stones? Even while outraged, he had still remembered to use voice transmissions. Shriveled cultivator sighed and attempted to placate him. It is far too dangerous to continue to live within the inner star seas. Us rogue cultivators could fall victim to any calamity that appears. When that happens, our lives will be forfeit. What use will spirit stones have then? After all, we all reckon that the forces of the Star Palace are nearly equal to that of the Starfall Coalition. It is very likely the war will last several years, if not several tens of years. I don't want to spend my days flying around while fleeing and hiding in fear. As for spirit stones, we all possess no small amount of rare materials we've been keeping in reserve. We should be able to use them to pay the remaining amount of spirit stones. In that manner, they would be willing to agree and give us face. Impossible. Are we going to pour out our entire fortunes to go to the outer star seas? Absurd. The dark-faced man shook his head in a miserly fashion. The shriveled man was also distressed and bitterly said, "Fine, let's go back and see what the others think." If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 508, Deciding on a Plan. After that was said, their conversation ended with sullen expression as they quickly flew down Sage Mountain on their magic tools. Han Li didn't closely follow after them as it would have been too obvious. Instead, he coiled a sliver of spiritual sense around the shriveled man and watched them fly off with a detached expression before following them from a distance. The two of them were quite slow compared to Han Li. After 2 hours, they finally reached the 4th layer of Sage Mountain and entered an extremely ordinary courtyard residence. Soon after, Han Li appeared above the residence. The scenery here was quite serene. In addition to a few other similar residences in the distance, there was also a small green forest of bamboo nearby. Han Li's eyes became bright when he gazed at the residence. It was unremarkable, but there was a small flowing water formation placed outside. Although it would prove to be of little use against any cultivators that truly wished to intrude, it would allow for an early warning. However, the formation spell was of little use against Han Li, a core formation cultivator who possessed some understanding towards formation spells. Han Li had complete confidence he could slip in without alerting its owner. In fact, that was precisely what he planned to do. His hands formed an incantation gesture before his figure distorted, disappearing in a haze of azure light. Not long after, Han Li reappeared in the courtyard without a sound. As his magic power had been completely restrained from circulating, there was no way a core formation cultivator could detect Han Li, let alone a foundation establishment cultivator. The reason why Han Li was so careful was because he had feared there was a core formation cultivator here. Were that not the case, he would have merely used a common concealment technique. Han Li motionlessly stood at the center of the courtyard and slowly released his spiritual sense around him, enveloping the entire courtyard. Afterwards, slight surprise appeared on his face as he stared in the direction of a side wing. He clearly felt that the other rooms were empty. Only the room in the side wing had any cultivators, 7 to be exact. The 7 cultivators consisted of 5 men and 2 women. The shriveled man and the dark-skinned middle-aged man were amongst them. The one who possessed the highest cultivation was a large, hook-nosed, embroidered-robed man who possessed a spirited gaze. Apart from his nose, he had a grand and imposing appearance. He had progressed to the peak of late foundation establishment and had already entered the false core stage. He was already at the point where he should be undergoing preparations for core formation. As for the rest, they were at mid-foundation establishment stage. This was to be expected. One must require that cultivation at the very least if they wish to head to the outer star seas. However, perhaps due to what they had discussed before, they were all silent with sullen expressions. Not a word was being said in the room. Han Li wasn't impatient. He quietly stood in place and waited. He was confident that their following chat was sure to give him some useful information and bring him closer to being able to form a plan. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, a middle-aged woman lost her patience and anxiously said, "Brother Yi, fellow Taoist Huang had brought back word that they want 5,000 spirit stones per person before allowing us to teleport to the outer star seas. In that case, we would be fairly relieved of our assignments to the Star Palace after handing over the spirit stones. What does Brother Yi think? After all, once the battle occurs, it will be too late to leave." The pale-skinned middle-aged woman that sat at her side scowled and spoke with a hostile tone. "Lady Liu, from your tone, you seem quite willing to let go of your spirit stones. But did you not think that your fellow Taoists aren't able to casually spend such an amount? My husband and I wouldn't be able to produce that sum even with all of our possessions. Could it be that fellow Taoist wishes to leave alone?" When the other woman heard her, she revealed a trace of annoyance and asked, "When did I say that I was going alone? How about we just ask Brother Yi? You are very experienced and have the highest cultivation among us. Surely you can give us a proper analysis of the pros and cons." The embroidered-robed man said, "All right, there is no need for you two to continue. Fellow Taoist Liu cannot use the transportation formation alone. The outer star seas isn't a place where a lone formation establishment cultivator can roam around. It is only when we go together that we will be able to survive. If we're lucky, we'll manage to kill a few spirit beasts and use their cores to refine medicine pills. In addition, we won't be tasked with killing a cultivator of a similar grade during the battle. Even core formation cultivators would find it difficult to preserve their lives during the fray, let alone us low-grade cultivators. Moreover, there is also the worry of the Star Palace turning back on their word. That's impossible. The Star Palace seems to have never done such unjust actions. Fellow Taoist Yi, aren't you being overly suspicious? The burly youth said. Although his age was young, he had a mature aura. Although the possibility is low, it is still possible. This isn't a period where the Star Palace is the sole superpower. If the Star Palace feels it is in danger, it will do as it wants without any fear of the consequences. Such is the right of the powerful. Humph! The large, embroidered-robed man's face twitched before he disdainfully snorted. He seemed to hold quite some understanding of great powers. After that was said, everyone in the room remained silent as they sunk into thought. The large man then slowly continued. Therefore, the optimal choice would be to use spirit stones to preserve our lives. If we were to truly participate in the battle, it is quite possible that we would all perish. And even if some of us were to survive and head to the outer star seas, survival would be out of the question from a lack of strength. It would only be another path to disaster. However, it costs so many spirit stones. When the dark-skinned middle-aged man spoke with a distressed expression, the embroidered-robe cultivator interrupted him with an icy expression. What use are spirit stones if you're dead? Besides, we'll be able to make up for our losses by hunting down a few high-grade demon beasts in the outer star seas. What is most important at the moment is using the transportation formation. The dark-skinned cultivator seemed quite scared of the large man, and immediately grew silent at his rebuke. As for the lack of spirit stones, take out as many as you can. Let's see whether or not they will be flexible. If it won't do, then we'll take out our excess spirit stones and lend them to each other for the time being. After we teleport to the outer star seas, the debts will be paid back with interest. The large man imposingly gazed at the more destitute cultivators as he spoke as if having already decided for them. The six glanced at each other in discomfort, but they all reluctantly accepted his command. The large man revealed slight satisfaction and turned towards the shriveled man. He said with an imposing tone, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, I must trouble you to make another trip tomorrow and see if they are willing to take a lesser price. If it is impossible, then we will agree to those conditions. However, we must leave by the day after tomorrow. There cannot be any delays. It will all be meaningless unless we can leave before the battle erupts." The shriveled man repeatedly agreed. Afterwards, a lively discussion began to erupt in the room over the specific details. As Han Li stood outside the room, he was able to hear the entirety of their discussion with perfect clarity. He couldn't stop himself from mysteriously smiling. Then, with a flash of azure light, he disappeared without a trace. On the next day, the shriveled man left the residence and headed towards the starry sky palace, completely unaware of the person following him from above. When Han Li followed him into the vicinity of the starry sky palace, he cautiously slipped away into a nearby building. Han Li rubbed his nose and then quietly waited inside the building. About an hour later, the shriveled man sneakily emerged from the building with a trace of excitement betrayed on his face. Afterwards, Han Li followed him back to the residence. However, something unexpected had occurred before his eyes. Before entering the residence, the shriveled man's excitement completely disappeared and was exchanged with a miserable expression. When Han Li saw this, he frowned. With chin in hand, his mind began to ponder, could it be? If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 509, Infiltration. On the morning of the third day, underneath the bright skies, the group of Foundation establishment cultivators slipped out of their residence with utmost stealth and headed towards the starry sky palace. As the enforced curfew had just ended, there were only a few cultivators roaming through the early morning sky. Hence, the seven were even more careful. Each of them nervously went along their way with lowered heads. However, the embroidered-robed man in the lead vigilantly examined his surroundings as they flew. The journey to Starry Sky Palace was very smooth. Nothing happened to them as they flew to the 49th floor of Sage Mountain. When they arrived at the Starry Sky Palace, their expressions were relaxed and filled with relief. But at that moment, The embroidered-robed man in front suddenly stopped in the air with a shocked expression. He raised his arm with a solemn expression, performing a strange hand gesture. When the others behind him saw this, they abruptly halted and became vigilant. The embroidered-robed man stared at an empty location and spoke with a heavy tone. "For what reason has fellow Taoist blocked our path?" At that same moment, he began to reach for the storage pouch at his waist. The empty area in front of them flashed with azure light to reveal an azure-clothed cultivator standing there with his hands behind his back. He slowly spoke with a hoarse voice. There is no need for you fellow Taoists to be afraid. Although I've been waiting just for you, I mean no harm. I merely have something to request of you." Once the party clearly felt his cultivation, they were filled with alarm and surged with wariness. The man was also a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator at false core stage. With a cold glint flashing from his eyes, the embroidered-robed man calmly asked, "What is your esteemed name, fellow Taoist? How can we help you?" The azure-clothed man casually said something that made the 7 cultivators pale. "My name is Crooked Soul, a mere vagrant cultivator. Aren't you heading to the Starry Sky Palace? Could you bring me along? I also wish to head to the outer star seas." When the embroidered-robed man heard him, his expression fluctuated. He was silent for a moment before he widely smiled and said, "So it's fellow Taoist Crooked Soul, but what do you mean by Starry Sky Palace and the outer star seas? Our group is only going to attend to a few personal matters, and we just happen to pass here along the way. We have no business with the Starry Sky Palace. Fellow Taoist is mistaken." The embroidered-robed man came to a decision that, regardless of this Crooked Soul's intention, or how he managed to find out about their plans, there was absolutely no way he would easily agree. The others remained silent, as well as if they were leaving the matter entirely up to the large man. Crooked Soul chuckled and casually said, "There is no need for fellow Taoist ye to be so suspicious. Since I've already arrived here, how could I be fooled just like that?" The embroidered-robed man's heart trembled and he snorted, "Humph, so it seems you know my identity and have a clear understanding of our plans." He then unconsciously clutched his storage pouch with veins protruding from his hands. Having received an unknown command, the other cultivators suddenly dispersed in great coordination and surrounded the azure-clothed man. The azure-clothed man ignored their movements and spoke with great leisure. "You don't want to try and kill me. I don't mean to boast, but with my cultivation you wouldn't be able to kill me quickly. If I were to yell and call for the Star Palace, I wonder what would happen." After that was said, the group of cultivators glanced at each other before turning their gazes to the large, embroidered-robed man. The large man's expression became unsightly. Although he had yet to reach core formation, he had always boasted of his exceptional shrewdness, making him a menace among Foundation establishment cultivators. However, he clearly understood that the man's threats were no joke. After a moment of deliberation, he could only suppress his anger and coldly ask, "What does fellow Taoist want us to help you with? We've already said that we would take only 7 people. Moreover, the transportation formation can only take 7 cultivators at a time. They would certainly refuse if we were to add another." The azure-clothed man smiled. "Be at ease, I won't make things hard for you. So long as I enter the hall, I'll have my own methods for persuading them. If an agreement can't be reached, I will neither force the issue nor ruin your fortuitous affair." "Only that?" The large man frowned and wore a trace of doubt. "Only that," the azure-clothed man spoke with certainty. The large man muttered to himself for a moment before eventually gritting his teeth. "Fine, if it's only to give you an introduction, then we're willing to agree, if only barely." With a calm expression as if having anticipated the large man's concession, the azure-robed man saluted and said, "Then I must give you my thanks." The shriveled man raised his head to look at the sky and anxiously urged, "Since fellow Taoist wishes to head to the Starry Sky Palace, let us go quickly. We're already running late. They may become impatient." The azure-clothed man glanced at the shriveled man in silence, but the embroidered-robed man wordlessly raised his hand, and they continued on their way. They moved in a formation that kept the azure-robed cultivator at their center. It seemed they were quite wary of him. Still, the azure-clothed cultivator calmly followed after them. Of course, this azure-clothed cultivator was actually Han Li. He had restrained his magic power fluctuations to the level of a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator and had disguised his appearance. The remaining distance from the Starry Sky Hall wasn't long. After only a short moment, the party arrived in front of the Starry Sky Palace. At that moment, the shriveled man suddenly increased in speed and shot forward, arriving at the hall first. The embroidered-robed man and the others didn't find this odd in the slightest. After all, the shriveled man was the one who had relations with the Starry Sky Palace in the first place. Now that they arrived, it was only natural that he led the way, lest any misunderstandings occur. After entering, the party tried their hardest to maintain a calm expression, but a trace of apprehension was betrayed on their faces. Having entered the Starry Sky Palace, their lives were now in the hands of the other party. However, everything seemed to be going as expected. The restrictions that should have been there were absent, and it seemed the managers of the palace had disabled them ahead of time. When Han Li saw this, a strange expression momentarily appeared on his face. But what comforted the party the most was the sight of two white-clothed Star Palace Core Formation cultivators waiting for them in the hall with the transportation formations. When the shriveled man saw the two, he immediately broke into a smile and walked forward several steps to respectfully greet them. "Senior Gu, Senior Kyan, we've arrived. Have you finished the preparations on your end?" Among the two, the bald old man nodded his head, slowly saying, "We're ready on our side. Hand over the spirit stones and we'll give each person a displacement talisman. You can leave as soon as possible, but the spirit stones had better not be short." The embroidered-robed man stepped forward and respectfully said, "Be at ease, Senior. We've brought along the agreed amount of spirit stones." The bald old man examined him several times before speaking with a polite tone. "So, your fellow Taoist Yi, as expected, your cultivation is exceptional." But when his sights fell upon Han Li, his expression sunk. The bald old man's expression became gloomy and his voice was filled with suspicion. "Didn't we agree that it's supposed to be 7? Why is there another person here? This fellow Taoist also seems to be at the false core stage. May I know who you are?" The embroidered-robed man bitterly smiled, wanting to give an explanation. Han Li smiled and interrupted the large man. "I am Crooked Soul, a vagrant cultivator that also wishes to head to the outer star seas. I've heard that fellow Taoist Yi and the others had a connection, and chose to deliberately seek them out. I hope you two seniors don't take offense. If these seniors are willing to accommodate me, I am willing to pay double their rate for the use of the transportation formation." Double. The bald old man was shocked for a moment before turning his head to look at the scholarly middle-aged cultivator at his side. The middle-aged man frowned and slowly said, "Even if you pay double, the largest number of people that can be sent in a single teleportation is 7. Also, we can only use the transportation formation once, so it is impossible to allow a teleportation for your use alone. Otherwise, it will be difficult to conceal our activities from the upper echelon. Junior has considered that, so he won't make it difficult for Senior." Han Li smiled and suddenly turned to the side, speaking without a trace of politeness. "Therefore, how about fellow Taoist temporarily hand over his spot?" If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 510, Blackmail. The person Han Li was requesting a spot from was the shriveled man. "What did you say?" Alarm flickered across the shriveled man's face, soon to be replaced with anger. The others glanced at each other, not knowing what Han Li intended. Han Li calmly said, "Be at ease, fellow Taoist. I won't allow you to do this in vain. I have 2 grade 5 demon beast cores. Take it as payment for your spot. Surely fellow Taoist won't turn his back on me." He then searched his robes and took 2 shining blue globes out of nowhere. From their emitted spiritual chi, they were genuine grade 5 demon cores. The shriveled man looked at the 2 demon cores with a trace of greed, but he soon thought of something and coldly snorted. "Humph! Does your esteemed self think that I will give up my place for a measly 2 demon cores?" Han Li didn't grow angry. Instead, he strangely smiled and his lips trembled several times, sending several voice transmissions to him in everyone's presence. The shriveled man suddenly paled after hearing them. Han Li then spoke to him with a leisurely tone without using a voice transmission. "With this, there should be no way fellow Taoists could possibly refuse this trade. Am I correct?" When the shriveled man heard Han Li, his nervous face became lined with cold sweat. After fiercely glaring at Han Li for a moment, the shriveled man's face twitched as he clenched his teeth and said, "Fine. Since fellow Taoists can say that, I will hand over my spot to you." Those words came as a shock to the other 6. The embroidered-robed man's expression sank and he stared at the shriveled man. He coldly said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, what are you saying? Didn't we say that we were going together? Why did you? The shriveled man bitterly laughed and helplessly said, I am truly sorry, but I fear we must part for the time being. You should all go first. I will join you if there is another opportunity. The embroidered man spoke no further, nor did the rest of the party. It was now apparent that something was being used against their fellow Taoist Zhang in order to force him to relinquish his spot. Hence, there was no point in continuing the discussion. Fortunately, a lack of one person didn't make too much of a difference in their plans. The bald old man frowned and imposingly glared at the shriveled man, Humph, who said you could exchange people as you wished. Senior Gu, I. The shriveled man was startled and thought to mutter an explanation, but he couldn't come up with anything. But at that moment, Han Li produced 2 jade boxes with a flick of his hand, tossing one each to the bald old man and the scholarly man at his side. When the two saw the jade boxes, they unconsciously caught them and calmly gazed at Han Li. Han Li spoke with a serene appearance. The boxes contained 2 treasures that Junior unexpectedly acquired. Please take them, seniors. The two gave each other a mutual glance with curiosity in their eyes. From their examination of the boxes, it seemed that they contained no tricks. They then carefully opened the boxes by a sliver to release several rays of red light. The two unconsciously revealed pleasant surprise upon seeing what was within. With a moved expression, the scholarly man said, Does fellow Taoist Crooked Soul truly wish to hand these 2 treasures over to us? Han Li faintly smiled and said, Junior understands that although the items are precious, they are of no use to him at his current cultivation. Junior wishes even more to head out to the outer star seas so that he can continue his peaceful cultivation. The bald old man couldn't contain his joy, and without any discussion with his partner, he hurriedly agreed, He. Good. Since fellow Taoist Crooked Soul has given us such a grand gift, we won't be unreasonable. You can use the transportation formation with the other 6. Although Cultivator Kyan appeared unhappy, he was also tempted by the item in his hand and didn't say anything in opposition. This scene shook the hearts of the Foundation establishment cultivators, causing them to feel a huge desire to see what those boxes contained. However, the boxes were quickly closed by the 2-star palace cultivators. As they didn't dare to use their spiritual sense to pry, they were left helpless. However, when the embroidered-robed man took another glance at the 2 jade boxes, a trace of amazement flickered in his eyes. Although he couldn't see what the boxes contained from what they had said, he couldn't help but think of the words magic treasure. Could it be that this person had truly given them magic treasures? Despite being just a guess, he couldn't help but feel amazed. Before the embroidered-robed man could finish his thoughts, the 2-star palace cultivators turned around to the transportation formation behind them and began to chant an incantation with their hands, grasping a white jade medallion. The Foundation establishment cultivators didn't see anything odd about this, but Han Li let out a long sigh of relief. Lucky, the transportation formation has a trick to it. Had I charged in without knowing this, I would find myself in a difficult situation. It seems taking out a few undesirable, yet somewhat valuable magic tools was quite an incisive move. The jade boxes each contained a flying knife magic treasure that sparkled with red light. These 2 flying knives were taken from Hu Yue after the Bone Sage had killed him one. Hu Yue was killed in Chapter 425, and his magic treasures were taken in Chapter 429. Although these magic treasures weren't particularly amazing, they were exceptionally precious to ordinary core formation cultivators. Even if the magic treasure couldn't be linked to one's consciousness, it could be directly used at 70% of its strength without the need of investing a large amount of time or resources. This was something that ordinary core formation cultivators could only dream of acquiring. Although many magic treasures have been passed down throughout the years, a majority of them had been destroyed in battle. Even with the remaining magic treasures, most of them would fall into the hands of nascent soul cultivators or exceedingly powerful core formation cultivators, though they would occasionally fall into the hands of a few nameless cultivators and minor powers. Huge superpowers like the Star Palace obviously acquired many magic treasures, but conversely, they also had an exceedingly large number of core formation cultivators. If these 2 early core formation cultivators didn't earn any merits, they wouldn't be bestowed any magic treasures. As such, they were wild with joy to find a magic treasure unexpectedly falling in their grasp. After refining them, their strength would receive a massive increase. As such, the shriveled man could only obediently hand over his place. Han Li had a full grasp over the situation. When Han Li saw the shriveled man's expression on his return to the residence, he grew suspicious and infiltrated his room. Although there didn't exist any magic techniques that could completely control a cultivator's consciousness, Han Li was able to put him into a half-conscious daze. With a combination of bewitchment techniques along with his immense spiritual sense, he was able to force out the shriveled man's deepest thoughts. Although the shriveled man only spouted out intermittent phrases during this state, Han Li ended up quite lucky, acquiring information that the shriveled man and the two-star palace cultivators had deliberately raised the price to squeeze the other Foundation establishment cultivators for all they had. With this information to blackmail him along with the enticement of the two demon cores, the shriveled man meekly submitted to Han Li, his heart filled to the brim with apprehension to the point of near panic. He couldn't help but think, did the Star Palace cultivators deliberately set me up? As the incantations reverberated throughout the hall, the transportation formation began to glow with white light. Following a clear ring, the white glow suddenly disappeared. After seeing that the restriction had disappeared from the formation, the bald old man turned to the party of formation establishment cultivators and bluntly said, "Normally, these is another manager of the hall, but as luck would have it, he was sent to the Star Palace Hall to handle emerging affairs in the past day. Otherwise, you would have had to pay far more. All right, come and hand over your spirit stones." When that was said, each of the cultivators immediately took out a storage pouch they had prepared ahead of time and handed them over to the bald old man. As for Han Li, he took out another two demon beast cores and handed them over, arousing a trace of astonishment from the old man's face. After examining each of the payments, the bald old man nodded with satisfaction. Seeing this, the scholarly middle-aged man took out a stack of talismans and began to pass them out amongst Han Li and the others. He pointed to the transportation formation and coldly said, "These are displacement talismans. You can leave after placing them on your body." The others were hesitant, but Han Li walked into it without a word. It wasn't that he was displaying courage, but that he had found nothing wrong with the transportation formation after quickly sweeping it with his spiritual sense. The stone tablet in front of the transportation formation read the words "Wondrous Depths." Han Li didn't have any particular impression towards this name. From his last experience, it seemed that the island's names didn't hold much significance. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 511, Out to Sea Again. After seeing Han Li walk into the teleportation formation without hesitation, the other cultivators paused for a moment before following him. After seeing that the 7 of them had entered the formation spell, the bald old man wore a faint smile and formed an incantation gesture that caused specks of white light to float from his finger. While staring at the specks of white light, the old man suddenly asked, "Since we're sending you to the outer star seas in secret, you're not going to blabber about this, right?" The embroidered-robed man was quick-witted and immediately replied with a sincere expression, "Of course we won't. We are truly grateful towards seniors for being so accommodating. There is no way we would do such a self-destructive thing. Moreover, what use would it be for us to say anything?" Staring at the embroidered-robed man, he coldly said, "If you understand, then good. As there are few people in the Star Palace with our position, we'd receive a stern warning at the worst. But if some rumors do arrive, then fellow Taoist Gu and I won't be so forgiving. Additionally, we heard you feared a sudden falling out in all carried response beads. Thorough, but unnecessary. We aren't about to soil our reputations over a few spirit stones." He then swept his gaze past the other cultivators before falling onto Han Li. "Senior truly is a reasonable person. Junior is but a knave that can only think of others in regards to his own desires." The embroidered-robed man forced a smile, but faintly felt a chill run down his back. "Humph, no need to speak any nonsense. You're now on your own." The bald old man didn't say anything further and flicked his finger, activating the transportation formation with a faint white magic seal. Suddenly, the spirit stones around the magic formation flourished with white light, causing the 7 to disappear. When the bald old man saw them successively teleport away, his expression suddenly changed and he bewilderedly asked, "What's going on? Didn't you say that you were going to give them false displacement talismans? Why did you give them real ones? This wasn't what we previously agreed upon." The scholarly cultivator coldly snorted and spoke with a grimace, If I truly took out false displacement talismans, do you really believe we would have been let off? The person who gave us the magic treasures was a nascent soul eccentric. If we took out false talismans, he would have killed us in a fit of anger. He then took out a white cloth and wiped the cold sweat off of his head. The bald old man said with a shocked expression, "Nascent soul cultivator. Brother Kyan, are you joking? That person was clearly a late Foundation establishment cultivator." The shriveled man that was left behind was at a loss. Brother Gu should know that my spirit beast, a soul hare, has no skills apart from being able to keenly sense another's spiritual sense. The scholarly man then flipped his hand to reveal an animal that strongly resembled a kitten. The spirit beast had ears as slender as a rabbit's and sparkling green eyes that continuously darted around. It appeared to be a rather adorable spirit beast. As he caressed the soul hare, he said, although he managed to conceal his aura with some sort of exceptional restraint technique, concealing himself from even the soul hare, he stealthily swept his spiritual sense past the formation spell after we dissolved the restrictions on it. This gave my soul hare the opportunity to detect something was amiss. My soul hare is able to give an appropriate reaction towards mid-core formation and even late-core formation cultivators. However, it didn't give a reaction, but merely continued to shiver inside my sleeve. It can only mean that his spiritual sense was unfathomably profound, but it has only ever given this response when we visit the elders. A trace of fear was contained in his voice. If that's the case, then he must be a nascent soul cultivator. Sweat started to line the bald old man's head. Even if he wasn't, then he must be a late core formation cultivator. Either way, it wouldn't take much effort for him to exterminate us. The scholarly man spoke without doubt. Luckily, Brother Kyan was so quick-witted. If we took out false talismans, we would have brought about our own destruction. I had originally thought he was quite an eccentric individual to give us each a magic treasure without the slightest heartache. But after some further thought, the old man then fearfully asked, "But would there be any problems produced by sending him off to the outer star seas?" What problems? He was a vagrant nascent soul cultivator. I imagine he headed to the outer star seas because he didn't want to be involved in the war between the Star Palace and the Starfall Coalition. Hence, there will be no problems to be had as long as we don't let our superiors know that we allowed a nascent soul cultivator to teleport to the outer star seas. Otherwise, we'll be severely punished. After giving the old man an explanation, his face grew gloomy as he eerily gazed at the dumbstruck shriveled man at their side. As the scholarly man imposingly gazed at him, the shriveled man suddenly trembled and came to a realization. He hastily took several steps back and said, "I didn't hear anything that you two seniors just said. I won't speak any drivel." Before the shriveled man could finish, a streak of yellow light silently flew out and circled around him several times before he fell to pieces. The bald old man recalled his magic treasure and gloomily said, "With this, no one else will know. Although we had something of a relationship together, unfortunately, I cannot let you leave." Han Li and the other 6 cultivators appeared at the other end of the transportation formation, with a flash of white light in a shabby stone room. Han Li swept his gaze to the corner of the room, where a Star Palace cultivator with a frail appearance was speaking with a scar-faced, gray-robed cultivator. When the Star Palace cultivator saw them appear, he examined them with a frown. However, he soon lost interest and continued to speak with the gray-robed cultivator. The cultivator in charge of the formation said with a displeased tone, "I've already said this. There are currently fixtures in place that render the formation one way only. It can only receive, not send. The sect has already taken all the displacement talismans from me, and even I can no longer return. There is no point in fellow Taoists trying to force me." The gray-robed cultivator shouted out with fury, "Nonsense! There were several people that went back several days ago. How can the transportation formation have changed so quickly?" "Humph, I've already explained it many times, but you just love to ignore me. I no longer have any obligation to speak any further." The Star Palace cultivator glared at the man before sitting down and closing his eyes. When the gray-robed cultivator saw that he was being ignored, his complexion turned bright red, but he didn't take the slightest action. He didn't have the courage to act against a Star Palace cultivator. He turned around in place with great agitation, but when his expression immediately fell upon Han Li and the others that had arrived, his face suddenly grew joyful. He walked towards them before stopping several steps ahead of them and saluted the embroidered-clothed man, who obviously appeared to be the leader of the group, before politely asking, "Did you fellow Taoists come from Heavenly Star City?" After seeing that the scar-faced man was also a late Foundation establishment cultivator, he didn't dare to ignore him and replied, "That's right, we've just arrived. What's wrong, fellow Taoist?" However, he could already guess what the gray-robed cultivator was about to say. The gray-robed cultivator asked with a hopeful tone, "I am Su Yun. I've been in the outer seas for several years. Could you tell me whether or not the Starfall Coalition has truly been formed and whether or not the city is on the verge of battle?" When the embroidered-robed man saw Su Yun's expression, he knew what he wanted to hear most. However, the truth would only disappoint him. Hence, he explained with complete openness, "It is true. The righteous and devilish Tao have forged the Starfall Coalition and immediately declared war on the Star Palace. As we do no wish to be drawn into the conflict, we teleported here. I fear fellow Taoists will have no way of returning for the time being." Su Yun stood in place in shock with a dejected expression. "How can that be? I wanted to return and have these painstakingly acquired materials be refined into medicinal pills. What a waste of time." After this was said, there was silence in the room. Despite having racked their brains to arrive at the outer star seas, they were helpless without any way to return. After a short moment, the embroidered-robed man's expression changed and he suddenly turned to the gray-robed man. He cordially said, "My name is Yi Jing and these are my close friends. Since fellow Taoist Su has lived here for several years, could he introduce Wondrous Depth Island to us? Of course, this won't be for free. We're willing to give you a few spirit stones as compensation." Although Su Yun didn't recover from his dejection, he still spiritedly replied, "There is no need for compensation. As you've already answered my question, I am merely returning the favor. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have, and I'll answer to the best of my knowledge." Suddenly, the party of Foundation establishment cultivators revealed joy at the prospect of being given an introduction to this unfamiliar place. It would prove quite favorable for them in their future endeavors. When Han Li saw this, he also smiled. With arms crossed, he stood behind them as he waited for the explanation. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 512, Blackrock City. Yi Jing, the embroidered-robed man, swept his gaze around the room before looking at the Star Palace cultivator sitting in the corner. "It is somewhat inconvenient to speak here. Fellow Taoist Su, how about we chat outside?" "Outside, sure," Su Yun indifferently replied. Yi Jing rejoiced, but he soon thought of something and turned his head around and widely smiled towards Han Li. "Brother Crooked Soul, wouldn't it be better to come along with us and listen? Better yet, we can work together." Han Li blankly stared for a moment before smiling. "All right, I did want to hear his explanation as well." Han Li then casually followed after them. "What, that fellow Taoist isn't part of your group?" Su Yun was quite surprised. The dark-skinned, middle-aged man suddenly shouted out with a trace of hostility. "He did teleport along with us, but before that, we were strangers." Yi Jing frowned in response but didn't say anything. Su Yun wordlessly nodded. After they all walked out of the stone room, the newcomers surveyed their surroundings with amazement. The scene was entirely different from what Han Li had seen on Deep Jade Island. They emerged within a small market city. Although it appeared crude and only spanned about 10 kilometers, the city was created entirely out of black stone. The shabby building that housed the transportation formation lay at the center of the city. It was propped up by a tall altar-like platform with steps descending from every side. Due to the height of the surrounding terrain, they were able to have a clear view of the surrounding city. The city seemed to be surrounded by 12-meter-tall stone walls along with a dense white sparkling barrier. However, there were tall buildings of varying sizes behind the walls. Strangely enough, none of them had pointed roofs. They were all flat. At first glance, although the city was full of buildings, few of them were independently constructed. It wasn't just a string of stone buildings joined together, but rather, frequent masses of stone buildings were lined up together. What shocked Han Li the most was that a few mortals were mingling amongst the cultivators on the crude black stone road, occasionally rushing in and out of the stone buildings. But this wasn't enough to shock Han Li by itself. It was the fact that a majority of the mortals were young, beautiful women. As for the other mortals, they were burly men and delicate youths. When Yi Jing's party saw this, they were just as shocked as Han Li. Since they wanted to travel to the outer star seas, it was only natural to do research on the islands in advance. However, This scene was completely contrary to the information they had acquired. A strange expression momentarily appeared on the Yijing's face. He then said with a deep voice, "Fellow Taoist Liu, take another look at the jade slip containing information on Wondrous Depths Island. Could it be that we were mistaken?" I'll take another look at it." The woman surnamed Liu hastily looked through her storage pouch. Su Yun waved his arm and stopped the woman from finding the jade slip. "There is no need to look for the information on Wondrous Depths Island. Since most of it is false, it is natural to feel surprised." Yijing's expression changed. "False? What is that supposed to mean?" "It is quite simple. Wondrous Depths Island is quite different from other Demon Beast Islands. All cultivators are given a gag order prior to their return, allowing them to only leak certain information. Else, they would suffer great punishment. It's hard to say whether or not it will prove fortunate that you've arrived at this island." "Certain information? Could it be due to the Star Palace?" Lady Liu appeared disturbed. Su Yun sighed and said, "It isn't the Star Palace, but the various united powers that reign over this island. Even the Star Palace is unwilling to lightly offend this faction." When those words were said, Han Li raised his eyebrows, while the others looked at each other in dismay. Su Yun chuckled and spoke with a loud, alluring tone, "He. This place isn't too different from what you've imagined. In fact, to some cultivators, it is a place they could only dream of. Blackrock City has the soul market and is the only city on Wondrous Depths Island. So long as you have spirit stones or demon cores, it is a cultivator's paradise. You can purchase items that cannot be acquired from other demon beast islands. Regardless of whether it's top-grade cultivation vessels, formidable magic treasures, priceless spirit beasts, or exceedingly rare materials, this place has it all." The nearby cultivators and mortals glanced over due to his loud voice, but they soon averted their eyes and went on their way. When Yijing heard this, he became especially bewildered. As for Han Li, he continued to look around with a calm expression as if he hadn't heard what Su Yun had said. When Su Yun saw this, he glanced at Han Li with slight surprise. Yijing let out a long sigh and asked with a heavy voice, "Could Brother Su give us an introduction of this place?" Su Yun seemed to have completely recovered from his low spirits and candidly said, "Of course I can. Since I can't leave for the time being, how about I give you an explanation of the city while we stroll around? It should prove more useful than giving an empty explanation while standing in place. However, if anyone has any windfalls in the future, please don't forget about me." "Then I must thank you, Brother Su. This city appears quite different from others." Yijing then looked at a male cultivator with a trace of amazement. The cultivator was holding a mortal woman in his embrace in a bold display as they walked down the street, much to the disinterest of the other mortals and cultivators around them. Su Yun smiled when he saw this and didn't say anything further. Instead, he brought them over to a large stone building. The building had already caught Han Li's attention, as it was one of the largest in the city. At a distance, he saw that two charming mortal women were standing at its entrance. As the many cultivators entered the building, they gave them a welcoming smile. Along the way, Su Yun warned them with a solemn expression, "Bear this in mind. Although this is Heavenly Star City, all magic battles are strictly forbidden apart from particular arenas. If this rule is violated, it will be punished by death without question." The dark-skinned, middle-aged man spoke with shock. "What? This punishment is even more severe than Heavenly Star City's." Su Yun slowly explained, "True, it is far more severe. But like this, cultivators who enter the city may truly be at ease without having to worry. To the best of my knowledge, no one has ever managed to carry out their revenge and successfully leave the city alive. After all, there is a nascent soul senior standing guard at all times." A nascent soul cultivator. Yijing's party all wore expressions of shock. Han Li's heart trembled violently, and he became completely vigilant. "All right, let's hold off on any more questions until after we go inside." Underneath the smiles of the two beautiful mortal women, the party apprehensively followed Su Yun into the building. As for Han Li, a strange glint flickered from his eyes before he curiously followed them in. After walking through the large entrance, a huge circular screen blocked their way. The screen was pink and had an image of a palace maid flying through the skies. Although the image of the woman was shown from behind, it appeared to be fluctuating as if she were truly in flight. From the faint pink light that the screen emitted, it couldn't possibly be a low-grade magic tool. To the sides of the screen, there were two semicircle doors, and to the front of the screen, there was a female cultivator who wore azure palace robes and appeared to be 30 years old. She was happily chatting with a smiling male cultivator. But strangely enough, despite her ordinary looks, each and every one of her movements were filled with a mature feminine charm. Additionally, the smile she wore as she spoke displayed a faintly seductive attraction. Although she was a mid-foundation establishment cultivator like the man she was speaking to, the man was completely enraptured by her. However, when the woman caught sight of Su Yun and the others, her eyes suddenly brightened and she clapped her hands, causing a young mortal girl to come out from behind a door. As the male cultivator was dragged behind the screen, he gazed at the female cultivator with a reluctant expression. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 513, Demon Beasts of the Depths. Well, if it isn't fellow Taoist Su, I heard you wanted to return to Heavenly Star City, but I suppose the transportation formation is still unusable. The woman's voice was soft and alluring, bringing forth a sense of comfort to those that heard it. And Li unconsciously frowned and bitterly laughed in his mind. It seemed a majority of the female cultivators that he met cultivated some sort of secret bewitchment technique. Although this woman's bewitchment techniques were far inferior to fairy violet spirits and yuan yaos, it was more than enough to easily capture the minds of a few low-grade male cultivators. With that thought, Han Li swept his gaze across the party of cultivators. Yi Jing and Su Yun were able to keep their expressions straight, but the other male cultivators had unnatural expressions. Their gazes unconsciously wandered across the woman's body. These cultivators are new arrivals. I've brought them along to take a look, Su Yun then said with a resentful tone. As for returning to Heavenly Star City, I'm afraid that won't be happening for a while. I didn't expect the news to be true. A battle is about to occur. With luminous eyes, the woman enchantingly covered her smile and said, "It's still good that you will remain here. If you were to leave, I'd be losing a dear customer." The woman's mature charm had fully captured the vulnerable men of the party, leaving the two women among them flushed red with anger. Annoyed at the woman's use of her bewitchment technique, Su Yun called out to her, "Lady Ming, they are my guests. A badge, please." All right. But it seems that these fellow Taoists should have no problem on this island. Their cultivation isn't inferior to yours. Lady Ming chuckled and then glanced at Han Li and Yi Jing before erasing her bewitchment technique, returning her appearance to that of an ordinary woman. The change occurred quickly, causing the others to pause for a moment before revealing embarrassment. The woman then clapped her hands, summoning a young mortal woman from behind the curtain. Lady Ming coldly spoke to the mortal woman, "Bring Master Su down to the auction. It should be starting soon." Then with a wave of her hand, she passed a green jade badge to Su Yun. Su Yun received the badge and followed the mortal woman to the side door without ever looking at her. Of course, Han Li and the others closely followed after them. In the instant he entered the door, Han Li felt a slight spiritual chi fluctuation, as if he had entered some sort of restriction. His expression momentarily changed before returning to normal. The party's gaze brightened as they saw the enchanting scenery that laid behind the screen. There was a long pathway about 6 meters wide that led to 2 expansive halls. The left hall was spacious and bright, and apart from a few tall black stone pillars, there were no other obstructions in sight. In addition, it was currently bustling with activity with about 30 cultivators waiting there, all in a single file line. Regardless of whether these cultivators were male or female, they were each accompanied by a young mortal woman. Although a few of the male cultivators were lecherously sizing up the scantily clad women, there were only a few teasing words spoken at most. They restrained themselves as if they were fearful of the consequences. At the end of the line, there was a small room that had a door shining with white light. When the cultivators in line pressed their jade badge against the door, it opened and allowed only one person inside. As for the large hall on the right, it was covered in a barrier of faint blue light, blocking it entirely from sight. This place is called the Bright Gem Pavilion. It is specialized in selling off harvests from the outer seas. Particularly valuable items may also be auctioned off here after being appropriately appraised. There are several similar businesses that operate in the city, but they are ran by differing powers, each backed by a nascent soul cultivator. Of course, at least that much is required to be doing business in a place as untamed as the outer seas. When Lady Liu heard this, she took in a cold breath of air and muttered, "So many nascent soul cultivators. Could they be from the Four Elements Merchant Union?" Su Yun calmly said, "The Four Elements Merchant Union. They have no power here. While they hold dominance over the other Demon Beast Islands, Wondrous Depths Island is the sole island where multiple factions join hands to control it. While these powers alone cannot compete with the Four Elements Merchant Union in the inner star seas, when joined together here, even the Star Palace dare not treat them lightly. However, this is only limited to Wondrous Depths Island. From Brother Su's tone, there seems to be something unique about Wondrous Depths Island. For what reason would so many powers dare to oppose the Four Elements Merchant Union? As Yi Jing was a shrewd and cunning sort, he heard something amiss from his words. With an ordinary expression, Su Yun explained, He, brother, you guessed correctly. The name Wondrous Depths is due to the nearby seas being unfathomably deep and filled with demon beasts. Rare high-grade demon beasts are often seen in those depths. It is said that demon beasts of even grade 8 and higher appear there. It is for these high-grade demon beasts that these various nascent soul experts stand in opposition against the Four Elements Merchant Union, forbidding them from gaining dominance of the island. It is said that when these depths were discovered, many battles erupted between the Four Elements Merchant Union and the various powers before the Star Palace later intervened to act as a mediator. After some unknown conditions were reached, the island was handed over to the various powers to jointly administer. It was at that time that it became forbidden to spread the truth of Profound Depths Island to the inner star seas. Otherwise, one would find themselves wanted dead by the joint powers. Han Li was quite amazed at this. As for the others, they felt even more shocked. Demon beasts of grade 8 or higher are existences equivalent to nascent soul cultivators. They truly exist here. Yi Jing was unable to keep his calm. I'm not too sure. I've never personally seen them. However, there truly are people that hunt grade 7 demon beasts. The Bright Gem Pavilion sells grade 7 demon cores where nascent soul cultivators compete at extraordinary prices. Su Yun then clicked his tongue in admiration. Han Li, who had kept silent until now, frowned and asked, Does fellow Taoist Su mean that demon beasts are easier to find in the depths? Su Yun glanced at Han Li in surprise. After pausing in thought, he said, Demon beasts are slightly easier to find in the depths. However, due to the frequent appearances of high-grade demon beasts there are also countless cultivators that meet their end. As Yi Jing's group had never previously visited another demon beast island, they were somewhat skeptical of these words. But Han Li managed to gain some understanding towards the depths. It seems that this was a place where danger came hand in hand with riches. So that's why this place was so odd. The party grew silent before the mortal woman guiding them respectfully asked, Masters, do you wish to first go to the treasure viewing hall or the treasure rest hall? There is nothing to see at the treasure viewing hall. It is only some appraisal masters looking at unidentified items before offering to exchange them for spirit stones or put them up for auction. Let's go to the treasure rest hall instead. The items there will expand the perspective of all fellow Taoists. Su Yun was clearly familiar with this place. Without waiting for the mortal woman to lead the way, he walked into the right hall. When he approached the light barrier, he wordlessly pressed the jade badge against it, causing a circular opening to appear. He then beckoned to the rest of the party before walking in. When Yi Jing and the others saw this, they simply entered in a line. When Han Li saw this, he noticed the mortal woman respectfully waiting outside and curiously asked her, You don't need to go inside. The mortal woman widely smiled at Han Li and explained, Us mortals aren't allowed to enter the treasure rest hall. This servant will be waiting for you outside. Han Li nodded and walked through the blue light barrier without another word. The light barrier then closed by itself. The interior was quite crude and simple. Apart from some wooden chairs, there was just a 10-meter wide stage at the end of the hall. There was an old man standing at the back of the stage, eloquently speaking into a shining blue stone that he was holding in his hand. About 30 cultivators of varying grades stood below him, consisting of both chi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators. There were no core formation cultivators among them. The old man respectfully said, This blue light stone is a fire attribute magic tool refined from exceptional materials. Its owner is putting it up for bid starting at 500 spirit stones. According to long-established rules, each increasing bid must be at least 30 spirit stones more. Let us start the bid. 530 spirit stones. 570. 600. After the old man finished, many cultivators began to shout out bids. Although the bids couldn't be said to be fiery, the final bid still managed to reach close to 700 spirit stones. A young Foundation establishment cultivator then walked up and bought the magic tool using solely spirit stones before immediately taking it away. Next up, we have an Earth Attribute magic tool. The old man continued to auction off the next item without any delay. Hanli naturally had no interests in magic tools and swept his gaze past the scene instead. He saw Su Yun whispering to the rest of the party at a corner of the hall. Hanli then walked over with an unchanged expression. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week. Chapter 514, Female Cultivation Vessels. Lady Liu doubtfully said to Su Yun, "This seems no different from ordinary auctions. Are we truly going to see any exceptional items here?" Su Yun said with a mysterious expression, "Relax. Although auctions frequently take place, occurring anywhere from one every several days to half a month, each auction will always show some exceptional items. Although they aren't auctioning off the most precious materials, they are still rarely seen in the inner star seas." He then saw Han Li walk over and gave him a smile. Han Li casually nodded his head and asked a question that left them somewhat surprised. "Fellow Taoist Su, how many cultivators are there in Blackrock City? There don't seem to be many to people present." Su Yun calmly admitted, "Brother Crooked Soul is truly discerning. Although there are temporary residences such as inns in Blackstone City, there are no permanent residences for foreign cultivators. High-grade cultivators may possess their own cave residence on another island. As for low-grade cultivators, they may take shelter in the small villages and towns on other islands with mortals. While all cultivators come to Blackstone City to do business, low-grade cultivators are by far the most commonly found." Yijing paused for a moment before asking a question that puzzled even Han Li. "But mustn't one be at least Foundation establishment to survive in the outer seas? Why are there so many mortals and chi condensation cultivators here?" Su Yun calmly replied, "Brother Yi's question strikes at the most crucial point, which is the greatest difference between Wondrous Depths Island and the other Demon Beast Islands. For other Demon Beast Islands, a few high-grade cultivators go there to hunt demon beasts before returning after accumulating enough materials. For Wondrous Depths Island, a few years after the various powers settled here, several spirit stone mines were discovered in some of the nearby islands, and a few production sites for required cultivation materials were established as well, causing the island to become entirely self-sufficient. As such, a few cultivators made a living here and dragged along their families, eventually producing the many mortals and low-grade cultivators in this city. I also heard that the powers administering Blackstone City are slowly transporting their main forces over to this city. I reckon in a couple tens of thousands of years, this place will become a second inner star seas. However, apart from Blackstone City, the villages on the other islands can't be considered safe in the least. Those small villages are often exterminated by sudden attacks from high-grade demon beasts. This current situation in this place quite resembles how the inner star seas first came to be." After that was said, the party was left dumbstruck. Yijing let out a deep breath before pensively asking, "Why aren't the Star Palace and the other powers involved with this place?" Su Yun coldly snorted and said, "This place is far from being anywhere near as prosperous as the inner star seas. Furthermore, there is still more than enough empty space in the inner star seas for them to vie for. What time do they have to spare over these desolate seas? In fact, the other powers are actually looking forward to having the island's governing factions move their forces over to this island. Then there would be few of the factors at play in the chaotic inner star seas." He was clearly still gloomy about the Star Palace, suddenly closing the transportation formation. After Yijing's party heard this, they felt it made sense and didn't speak any further about the subject after glancing at one another. As they were lowly Foundation establishment cultivators, it would be better for them to refrain from talking about powers far beyond their control, lest they attract calamity. After selling off several magic tools and materials, a blue-clothed, middle-aged man appeared behind the old man in charge of the auction. He held a red box containing a fist-sized sphere that was white at its center and purple at its edges. When Su Yun saw this, his spirits were roused. "Fellow Taoists, take a look. This is one of the most important goods that are auctioned off at Wondrous Depths Islands, demon beast eggs. There is no lack of such valuable treasures. These items fetch astronomical prices in the inner star seas, but they can be found for much cheaper on Profound Depths Island. This is because apart from a few particular beast eggs, A majority of them are incapable of being transferred over through the teleportation formation. When they are teleported over, most eggs die. That is why whenever a rare demon beast egg appears, the spirit beast is usually hatched and nurtured until it can tolerate the transportation formation before being brought back to the inner star seas. This is, of course, after high-grade cultivators bid copious amounts of spirit stones for it. Demon beast egg. Yijing's eyes brightened. He had always dreamed of raising a high-grade demon beast. The others also revealed expressions of pleasant surprise. With that said, they would later have the opportunity to acquire their own spirit beast. In the inner star seas, finding a good spirit beast was an extremely difficult matter. This is the egg of a violet cloud eagle. Upon reaching maturity, it becomes a grade 4 demon beast. Although it only knows simple defensive magic techniques, it has a body of steel-like feathers and is faster than top-grade flying magic tools. With talons that can easily tear through the defenses of a Foundation establishment cultivator, it can be considered a rare demon beast and undoubtedly an optimal choice for Foundation establishment cultivators. The starting price is 2,000 spirit stone. Each bid must increase by at least 100. The bid will now start. The old man seemed quite confident about the popularity of the demon beast egg. After only giving a quick introduction, he started the bid without any delay. When the cultivators beneath him heard that the bidding had started, they immediately started calling out their prices. Although grade 4 demon beasts held little interest to core formation cultivators, they're quite suitable for Foundation establishment cultivators. This is because not only do higher grade spirit beasts cost far more, but the time it takes for them to mature was also far too long. Even if they used secret techniques to hasten their aging, it would still take far too long for a Foundation establishment cultivator. 2,500 spirit stones. 2,700. 3,000. The violet cloud eagle's egg quickly broke 3,000 spirit stones, before finally topping off at 3,300 spirit stones by an excited female cultivator. The dark-skinned, middle-aged man gazed at the egg in the woman's hand and muttered, "It truly is far cheaper than the inner star seas. If this were Heavenly Star City, this kind of flying spirit beast would easily fetch over 5,000 spirit stones." Apart from Han Li, all the others watched this scene with bright eyes. When Su-yun saw this, he knowingly smiled. Up next, the old man auctioned off a grade 3 spirit beast egg, followed by a grade 4 demon beast, both at a considerable price, before concluding the spirit beast egg auction. Upon seeing what was auctioned next, Lady Liu couldn't help but wear a face of shock. What's going on? The others in her party also looked surprised. Two beautiful women that appeared to be around 20 years old stood at the old man's side. Although they only had cultivations at the third layer of chi condensation, they were both genuine cultivators. From their submissive attitude while being brought on stage, it seemed the two female cultivators were the goods to be auctioned. Su-yun didn't reveal the slightest surprise, and gestured for them to listen to what the old man was about to say. Up next, we have two low-grade chi condensation cultivation vessels. They have only cultivated the basic 5 elements cultivation arts, and both of them are undefiled. According to their requests, only a mid-foundation establishment cultivator or higher may bid on them. The starting bid on each of them is 2,000 spirit stones. Each increase in bid must be. Ever since the old man brought the two women on stage, many of the male cultivators beneath him started to leer at the women. However, the old man's words were quite dragged out for a long while, and nobody uttered a bid. Two male cultivators that sat in front of the group even began to have a whispered discussion. 2,000 spirit stones to buy a third-layer female cultivation vessel. If you really wanted a concubine, wouldn't you want to go elsewhere and buy a mortal girl? When they grow old, you could just pass them spirit stones and have them leave. If it were a Foundation establishment vessel, I'd be more than willing to spend more spirit stones. You're dreaming. Do you think you're a core formation cultivator? Don't forget the customs here. Foundation establishment vessels aren't something that the likes of us could ever afford. At that amount of spirit stones, it'd be more profitable to buy a spirit beast egg. And Han Li heard their chatter. Although he felt amazed, any sign of it soon disappeared from his face. He had long ago heard rumors of a few powers secretly nurturing some young female cultivators for the sole purpose of being cultivation vessels. There were even a few high-grade cultivators that bestowed female cultivators as gifts, but regardless of how it was said, open auctions of female cultivation vessels never occurred in the inner star seas. It truly shocked him how openly it occurred here. Yijing and company managed to calm their expressions. After all, cultivation vessels were something that everyone knew about in the cultivation world. However, as they had 2 female cultivators in their party, the current situation was quite uncomfortable. There is no need for fellow Taoists to feel shocked. These women were willing to act as cultivation vessels without coercion. As their aptitudes are terrible as a whole, it would be quite difficult for them to cultivate to high layers of cultivation using ordinary methods. They have no elders to rely on, and no powers are willing to invest the spirit stones required to nurture them. Hence, this is their only method in the outer star seas, as they found it disdainful to do mortals' work and suicidal to go out and hunt demon beasts. As they have managed to somewhat cultivate, they will take the initiative to become a cultivation vessel for a higher-grade male cultivator. As such, they can give their homes a large amount of spirit stones and manage to acquire a pillar of support for themselves. If they are able to acquire the favor of a male cultivator, they will be able to become a concubine or have an opportunity to become something greater. Naturally, there are even high-grade female cultivators that take the initiative to become cultivation vessels for other reasons. But in that case, lower-grade male cultivators are forbidden from bidding. That is to be expected. Su Yun slowly explained this as if he were long accustomed to the sight. If you enjoy the translation, please consider supporting the novel on Patreon. Every patron counts towards the translation speed goals, no matter how small. I've also started adding future chapters for preview. With enough support, I will be able to translate full-time and release 10+ chapters a week.